Carlson, go ahead.
Allison called right before the meeting started and said she was unable to attend, but if there was any legal questions that she would answer them to the committee if we got them to her.
Okay, this is May 21st. This is the committee to review the purpose, composition, functionality, and effectiveness of the standing committees of the town. Before we start, I'd like to say this meeting is being recorded and will be rebroadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws 30A, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, please make your presence known. Seeing none, this meeting will be replayed via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may be also accessed via the Government Access Channel, live video on demand archives of the Town of Barnstable at the website for that. Going to do roll call.
Certainly. Councilors, Burdick.
Present.
Clark. Chair of Committee, Councilor Crowe.
Here.
Councilor Lutke. Here. Councilor Turkelson. You have quorum.
Okay, we'll start off with public comment. Anybody from the public like to make a comment? This will be the time for public comment today.
Okay, I didn't know if when it comes to human services, you wanted me to speak then? Because I'm here for the
yeah,
human
you'll be
services, or
first.
if you want me to go now?
You'll be first. So we're just asking for general public comment.
Okay,
If
thank
anybody
you. I
has-
just wanted to clarify, thank you.
Larry?
I'd like to do it
Go ahead.
specifically to participate on that part, if that's okay. I don't have anything general yet.
On the human services.
Not so much on aging.
This is public comment right now, so if you want a public comment, do so right now.
I told him that I've been sitting in on the aging meetings, trying to help them with some things. They've got some issues. And all I'm trying to do is just feed them people what to do to get things addressed. I think I might be more valuable when you call that committee up, and let me just say it then.
Okay. Just want to mention that Chris Clark, Councilor Chris Clark has just joined the meeting.
Sorry.
Okay, public comment, we're going to the discussion on human services.
Is it all right? You want me to stand up? or
Yeah,
come in,
please go
or
ahead.
what would you like me to do?
Just introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Oh, no problem. My name is Cheryl Powell. I had the pleasure to be chairman of human
Shouldn't you
services.
come down here?
Oh, sure.
You
Be a
can-
little
You
bit.
can, wherever you're comfortable.
Sit right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry to put my back to you.
No pain.
Every committee does something differently, so as I always inquire as to where
Yes.
I want it. So, as I said, I'm chairman of Human Services. I've had the pleasure of being chairman for the past 3 years, almost to the date. I came on in May 3 years ago. And at that time, no disrespect to the previous committee, but they hadn't met for a while. And they had developed a pattern of we only met monthly or meet monthly, but some would come one every 3 months, one every 4 months. It wasn't really taken seriously. I was asked to be chair. Okay, but we're gonna meet, we're gonna look at the purview, and we're gonna do our best to meet that. For the next 1.5 years, what happened was we started meeting with groups. So because there are certain entities that are identified, that is our purview, to try to connect the collaterals and come up with a plan to put before the town council for consideration, and maybe to help with that proposal at the town council's preference. And so we identified the goals, we identified the umbrella areas, what were the problems, what were the key issues in the community, and we met with various entities in the community, such as the Council of Churches, several mental health facilities, Cape Behavioral, Cape Cod Healthcare came with the Director of Operations, 460 Main, which is a mental health facility, Gosnell to cover the addictions, which is one of the umbrellas, Duffy covers a number of things, homelessness, mental health, medical, the whole gambit really, they do. We're dealing with homelessness and health. We've identified crime, addictions, housing. Relief came before us, which is an entity, for those who don't know, people you cannot trust with their medicines, or for one reason or another, cognitive or addictions or something. They will go into the home, they'll have lock boxes. For instance, at the shelters, they have half a room covered with lock boxes with the person's name, so they're not getting their own meds. They are coming and given by Relief, who are licensed to do so. We met with the police department and with the fire department. So we identified the areas and I identified some of the key people who could help us. Some of the people on the committee decided that was too much and they decided to go elsewhere. And because I was saying, you can't miss 4 months in a row, we only meet monthly, we have to do this. So anyway, I started trying to get people who were really willing to be doers to help the town. First one that came on was Dr. Kimberly Crawford-Crowder. She was unable to be here. She's the new medical director at Baker. Outstanding individual, works in these areas extensively. Next was Missy Kay, who is here tonight, who is our clerk. You can ask her what her background is. When she actually applied to the appointments committee, I went and stood up for her, and they looked at her resume, and it was like, boy, can we have 10 of you? They did. It was impressive. Anyway, then Suzanne Welsh has legal secretary background. She is also here tonight. It speaks a lot. 4 of our members, the ones that couldn't get out of work, came because this is important to them. We then had the pleasure of welcoming Wendy Crocker. She is a mental health practitioner as well. And then we brought in Kevin Matthews, who I also had the pleasure of serving with on the HHDC. He honored me by one day saying, can you tell me what other committees you serve on? I'd like to apply. He did. He applied in January of 2024. And he came, 2024? Anyway, he's outstanding. Our newest member, as of about 3 weeks ago, which has this with a full house, is Patrick Downey. He runs the outreach within the community. And for the longest time, until very recently, they were funding it out of their own pockets. So we have had about 30 entities who have come before us in fall. We have made requests to meet twice, but I'll come back to that one. Don't let me forget to say, please, how you can help us. There were some problems that started to arise, and we did kind of wonder if we were taken seriously because we had, we had booked this room well in advance, and I was going to have all those entities get together because that's where we are now. Everybody, the various entities I read out and others are saying, okay, now let's put together a plan. Now that everybody knows what everybody does and where we are, let's get down to brass tacks and say, how can we help this community? And thank God, it was about 2 months ago, I thought I just had a gut feeling, so I canceled. We kept the meeting, but I canceled having them all here because I arrived just inside that door. And somebody who's seating your position got up and went over to me because I'm like doing this, and she said, we're putting you upstairs in the planning room. There's no way we would have gotten 30 entities plus 7 members into that room. And it was properly booked. I'm not complaining, I'm just saying some of where we were with it. We have made a request. I met with, after that I asked to meet with the town manager and the town assistant manager, which I did. Wonderful people. They have very hard jobs to do, and I totally respect them. But I made the request that we want to meet twice a month because we have a huge task and we want to accomplish it. So we've asked if it's possible for us to meet twice a month. But I had also made a suggestion because I was speaking with Town Councilor Lucky, who is our very valuable Town Council liaison. I've had the pleasure of having Chris on the HHDC as a Town Council liaison. We've had 2 outstanding people. And it was a matter that, I got my train of thought where I was going with it, but I might come back to it. We wanted to have 2 meetings a week. Oh, I know what it was. You had suggested we needed a place to plug in. And I agreed with that very much because most like the HHDC, I know it's a regulatory body, but we have planning help and we know that it's booked and everything else. But we asked if it was possible to plug in somewhere else. And I had sent you an email as possible community services because I thought the suggestion was outstanding. Because I looked at what community services does, and it seems a natural place for us to stand in, because you also have, which is what sparked that in my memory, you know, the elder services, you have the veterans and all that. It's a natural not partnership, but to help in that way and to come in under the community services if this committee feels and if the town council feels that would work. One of the things that we were talking about, which is where some of the other newer members come in, is grants. We're not asking for money. We're very dedicated. Our value is in our dedication. Our value is in the fact that we're actually asking to work twice as hard by having 2 meetings, because you just can't get all this done in 1 meeting. We're meeting regularly. We have people who show up. I also ask that we go on camera. We have now had 2 meetings where we're on camera because we were granted that. I personally feel all committees ought to be on camera so you know what they're doing. And we had so many valuable people who presented to us and gave us all the stuff, that, like these ones I just rattled off. And the town could have learned so much from the breakdown of what they actually do and how they do it. But even though we're not paid, what we feel is that when we come up, the plan is when we come up with a proposal, with everybody working together, is that there are grants. These are just some of the grants that can be had to help out with some of these areas we've got. And I won't read all 2. I've highlighted 3 or 4. It's like $30 million grant. This is not to pay us. We're not taking 1 penny. We would like, if we ever were to apply to it, to say that we have to see what the town requirements are so that we have some sort of town approval or whatever, because we can't compete with the town, of course. But for instance, this one, the Cummings grant, wide range of local causes, including human services, which includes housing, social justice, food security, homelessness. Another one would be grants for communities, for care, helps with aging. For those most vulnerable in the communities, I would say our homeless are one of the most vulnerable that we have, and also the addictions. And what reason why I call them umbrellas is because they all overlap. Like you have addictions, you have homelessness, you have mental health. There's a place where a lot of these meet. Of the patients that I treat, I would say probably 95% of them are in that middle category, that they check a lot of boxes. What else have we got here? Just read off a couple more. The block grants, I think I was told aren't really available anymore. Mass housing. This is a $220,000 for helping with that. This is homelessness, including funding for shelters, rapid rehousing, other services, human services, transportation, housing, homelessness, shelter. A lot of times when you help people and you give them a home, you find that, or not give them a home, but you find a place for them to stay and recover, you can help them to rebuild their lives. Emergency homeless support. That's just a few of them. I'm not going to go through all those with you, but it's just to show some of them. So when the committee for committees, I heard that we're kind of being reviewed. I'm hoping you can find a way for you to help us. We don't really want to get scratched because we've gotten so far and we're ready to meet with these other groups. That was only 2 months ago. But I thought, now we're going to have to wait till after this because I'm not going to bring them together again. You know, that one got canceled, but I'm kind of like, let's find out where it is because we don't want to misrepresent in the town. So that's the point where we are, but we've certainly been busy. And the mere fact that there's 4 out of 7 of us who were able to change their plans. I know for a fact that Wendy's last patient is such that she's often, a little bit late, but she makes sure that she gets to the meetings. Suzanne, bless her, is retired. I canceled 2 patients because this is important. I'm not complaining or anything. I'm just saying that we're dedicated enough to adjust our lives. There were a couple that couldn't make it because of work. So those are what we're hoping, that, we've now put a lot into it, and we haven't been idle just because we weren't on camera. As I said, the first year and a half, there was a huge problem with quorum. Then there was another problem because when people were applying, for instance, Kevin, we have one person still hasn't been seen by the appointments committee, but some people were waiting up to 10 months because the appointments committee not a complaint, just simply a reality, and I know it had to be done. They had to focus on the ad hoc committees first, but that because the people had already left and we hadn't filled in yet, we had people who had applied, we didn't have quorum. So we have to abide by open meeting law. So that explains why some of the meetings were canceled, which I didn't like doing, but I had no choice. But we're now at full strength, and as of 3-4 weeks ago, Cynthia, you would know better, it was Patrick Downey, was that 3-4 weeks ago?
Yeah, he was confirmed at our last council meeting. He received his letter and was sworn in, yeah.
Yeah, and you came to the next meeting, so it's now at full strength. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I'm sure the other committee members would happily talk to you as well.
Okay. I can start, as the liaison to the committee, I can start out. I know all these ladies very well, and they're amazing. They have such talent. What's been frustrating about this, and I think why, we had Seth choose 5 committees to go first, and we picked some ones, and I advocated that this one needs some help, which it does, and I'll keep saying, there's no place for it to plug in. And that's where we came up, Chris, with your folks. It was created maybe for well-intended purposes, but well-intended purposes don't necessarily equate to effectiveness and efficiency and quality. So you were created from a weird place, because we in this town, we don't do any human services, except for what perhaps Chris does. On purpose, we don't have a human services department. And it kind of resonates with me, because we don't have veterans services department either. Chris's folks just took over the Veterans Work-Off program. The only thing as a veteran, what we do with veterans is I get my disability stuff from the tax assessors, and that's about it, and there's just nothing. And then we rely on poor Major Quilty, who's our regional services officer. So I kind of have an experience with this, with the veterans thing, is the town has washed their hands for whatever reason, but I know that Barnstable doesn't do veterans, okay? With the exception of this new program that you guys are helping with. And human services seems the same way. And having just worked with Rick Presby on the Housing Ad Hoc Committee, he explained to me the genesis of the homeless shelter. He created that. The town came to him and said, Rick, we need a homeless shelter. The town didn't say, we're going to do it. They said, you do it, as the director of HAC, and then he turned it over to Catholic Services. So we have a great history of not wanting to deal with human services. So it puts you in an incredibly awkward situation.
Challenging.
And until we have a place to plug in, and that's why I'm kind of pinning all my hopes on Chris. I mean, if he can, speak to his experience with what his outreach is. He has the Council on Aging. You have the Hyannis Youth and Community Center. I see a natural, then we have every possible, and you've listed them, and I've gone to all your meetings, so I've listened to the presentations. We have every possible entity to help in every way in this community. So it adds to the decision of the town not to do anything. What could we possibly add that's not already been done, and perhaps dilute those entities' abilities to apply for grants? You talked about the grants. How would we execute the grants without a staff? We have a recent experience, and Cheryl, I know you were very involved in this, in the opioid settlement. That was very awkward for the town, because we had nothing. We had nothing to do. How could we do this opioid because we don't have an entity? I don't know, Chris, if you were approached at all on that, but we had to hire someone from the outside, get together a group, some of them, the folks that Cheryl has had talk to her group. I went to a couple of them. I don't know if you guys did, but I know Felicia was at a couple of them.
Sure.
And they got the information and now that's being executed. But, you know, why didn't we leverage the Human Services Committee to do that? My gosh, the expertise, I mean, we don't probably have time for the resumes, but the expertise that exists in this group is amazing, amazing. And we should have leveraged that, but we didn't. We decided to do something else. So, you know, I think we really need, I feel for Cheryl. She's done yeoman's work to put this committee together. She now has a very high-functioning group. I'd like to give her a chance, but if there's nowhere to plug in, it's almost a waste of time. So I'm hoping we can have an honest discussion here. And Chris, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know you and I spoke a little bit. I think Cheryl interacted with you. Have you had time to kind of think about how these folks could maybe plug in within your, you know, the talk is a human services department. I think that's too heavy of a lift now. I think if you plugged in at a lower level, and let's see what value we can get out of this. Let's see what we can bring to the town.
I think it
So-
would improve the town a great deal.
I don't know, Chris, do you have some thoughts on it? Have you been able to?
I received the email last Monday and have read it. And I defer to Manager Ells as far as any recommendations about a plugin, but I looked at it as a need to definitely have a diode is the way that I would do it, or an intersection where there's all these entities that Cheryl, you've listed, and trying to then encapsulate or at least direct. As you had mentioned, Councilor Leckie, there's the Council on Aging where even if there was a personnel or there was that diode to say, all right, well, you're over 60 or you're a veteran, you're looking for assistance, you need to call Kelly and Jackie and her staff, or you have youth. But I think there's a lot of concern because there's a lot of overlap in a lot of this where you start going, all right, how much of this is school related?
The umbrellas.
How much of this is now we're working, and we tried at the Hyannis Youth and Community Center through Recreation to have resource person, and it was just not a position that we had the expertise to manage, and we felt like we were almost working against the schools with their resource. Well, we're another resource. If you don't want to go in front of your peers and you're looking for help, we can kind of do it outside of the beaten path of there. So I believe there's merit in having a plug-in, I think is your terminology, or in a diode. I just don't know what that all looks like, and to be totally honest, I don't have the expertise just to raise my hand and say, hey, this is something that works. There's a need. I know the work that you do and your organization does. Cheryl, you know that I was involved in the opioid abatement funds. And I think that, to your point of like, well, we had to hire somebody, I think it was a collective decision with everybody that it was the right thing to do. So it wasn't, hey, the town councilors did something wrong or town management did something wrong. This was vested in other communities did it, and that was the right way to go forward. So I definitely think that there's merit in this committee, and there's merit in trying to find a home. I don't know where that home lies. I would defer to the town manager and town council to give me that directive of what you are and what we can do to
You
help.
mentioned the youth piece. Could you see them, working in that space? Oh, would that be a space that,
Am I allowed to add something?
oh,
to
you're
this?
allowed to ask. I'm just trying to see if we can,
One of the newest members of the youth committee has asked if she can attend our meetings on a regular basis. And I'm going, of course you can. I think, that kind of input would be very, very valuable. She's going to start doing that. Simply to learn what we're doing and to get feedback from the youth perspective, which I think is a fabulous idea.
Well, similar to what you said with your umbrella analogy, I think there's a lot of things that kind of overlap when you look at veterans, you look at seniors, and you look at the youth commission, but I think a lot of these things too are kept separated for a reason. So the youth commission feels like they are in charge. They are their own committee. They don't want to be directed, and we don't want them, honestly, to be directed by adults. We want them to, what is it like in your world? What is your perspective? I'm going to be 50 this month. I don't pretend to know what a 16-year-old wants, but to have those common cores and that common connection is definitely an opportunity. I think that should be at least looked at. And I always found it a little confusing, still rather new to my position, and looking at other communities where there is a health and human services department or a community services and a health department. And then we have a health division, but it goes under licensing, and it's different.
It's different.
It's
yeah.
just different. So how to get your proper microphone or diode or plug-in, I think is an opportunity that needs to be figured out at some point.
I think what we're looking for is basically that, to, recognize that we're not sitting down doing nothing, we're not, having club socials or something. We're actually doing work, and we're trying to find ways to help the town in a united way. Our particular purview asked us to identify the various areas, which we call the umbrellas. The various areas, because it was too wide to just think each entity is an area. No, let's put them in their categories, which a lot of them overlap. But they really overlap in the people they serve. In other words, the people they serve overlap on where they plug in, which you've indicated. We want to meet. Our goal, and why it's postponed till after this, is to meet with them and start putting together a proper plan and proposal. But and I had forgotten to mention that we last year we were also working on, before we had that gap of filling the vacant seats, we were meeting with contractors. And the idea was, because what we have found is that a lot of these people who get a lot of these umbrellas, they've lost their sense of dignity. They're trying to stay clean. They're trying to stay out of crime. Their families, because of what they were involved with, want nothing more to do with them. Maybe they're divorced now, or their kids don't want to see them anymore. So a lot of them end up trying to stay clean while also being in a shelter. They've lost their jobs. So it's a way of giving them their dignity and get back to a life that they want. So a lot of contractors had said, well, when you start to put the plan together, and it'll have to go to legal anyway, put together some sort of agreement that if they take them on and train them, that they'll be, and I had like 4 contractors that said yes, we'll train them in this, we'll train them in that. But it has to be, you come in and you're not sober, you're out of the program type thing. But it gives them a venue. That's part of the problem these people have. They have no venue to rebuild their life.
I'm not sure I understand your plan. What is the plan you're presenting the town? I don't understand, because we have no staff.
We're supposed to put together.
No, but what, you're presenting a plan of what? How do we execute the plan when we have no staff? I don't
Are you
understand.
in the human services or the town?
I'm saying, you said your committee's gonna give us a plan.
A proposal.
What is the proposal? How do we execute it if we have no staff? What are we doing with it?
Well, we don't have any staff, but what we would do is coordinate, because what we're supposed to do is coordinate it. So what we would do is say, this is how this would work. It could be implemented, because we have a uniqueness in Barnstable in that, we're not like Boston. We're smaller, much smaller, and these various entities are.
Do they want to be
20 to
directed
30
by
minutes
you?
of-
Are you saying
Oh, no,
they're
they wouldn't be
directed?
directed, but it
So
would.
what are you
So
gonna
I'll
do?
give you an example. Bay Cove, I forgot to mention it, Bay Cove and Duffy have formed their own smaller thing. So the way they trade off, or not trade off, how do I want to put it? Let's use a single patient to make it simpler. A patient comes in and is trying to stay off of drugs, have been kicked out of their house, whatever. So, they need to, what am I gonna do, what am I gonna do? So, Duffy will help them with medically, they'll refer them to Gosnell. They'll get called to Gosnell, Gosnell will arrange one thing. Then they'll either go to Cape Cod Healthcare or 460 Brightview, although Brightview is now left, one of the others to fill in the other service, under the other umbrella. So they already have a organized link, if this happens with this individual, we can refer here, we refer here. This provides this service, that provides that service. Because one service doesn't always help in the other areas, but we realize that this one individual is somewhere in the middle here. So how can we help this individual? And so,
Who's the we? Who's the we helping
well,
the
whoever it is
individual?
that meets that with that
No,
individual.
who? The town. Again, you're an entity
He's
of
not,
the
the
town.
person's not gonna come to the town. We have the various entities that have a
No,
plan.
I'm just trying to understand with,
It's working together and coordinating. That's how it is in the purview, to coordinate the
you
various.
see the town, but then that's you coordinating. You're coordinating?
No, all the various entities are working together. Right now, they work separately. We're trying to have them to work together with all of them, not just these examples I'm giving, but to work together on we know who to reach in these various areas. And we know in order for this service to be provided, but where we found that we were always coming up with a snag was I'll use addictions as an example. Okay, so the person's now off the cocaine or the fentanyl or whatever else, but they have nowhere to go. That's an umbrella of housing or umbrella of shelter or something like that. They have nowhere to go. And that's where we had the biggest problem in the area. That's what our statistics have shown, and what our experience has shown, is that's why one of the reasons they relapse was because nothing's gonna change. Nobody still likes me. I still can't go back to my family. I don't have a job to help retrain them and get them somewhere where they can rebuild their dignity.
Councilor Burdick, you have a question?
So just not as a rebuttal, but as a point of thought,
Mm-hmm.
you could make a recommendation that a position be created.
We have
to-
done that, but
And it hasn't gone, but like, so to say that because there is currently no staff person or apparatus that exists within the town in order to facilitate
Yes.
this sort of thought, doesn't necessarily, it doesn't obviate the removal of all that train of thought. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that so if you had this committee that was non-functional for a period of years, right? And then now you're back on track and you have a good group of people and you feel that it will be functional, and it is functional and will come up with something
Yeah.
of note, or at least some recommendations, however that looks, in the near future or whatever. It doesn't, we're maybe just now scratching the surface of what
we are.
we can accomplish through this method of, this train of thought and with these individuals. And, it seems to me more obvious, rather than saying, well, who will you interact with and what would be the point? But we obviously need to have a conversation, not necessarily in this committee, and not we, but us, the town council, about we need to have there needs to be a framework in place for this to work. We need to have a person or people or some who work under Chris or work under whomever, a facilitator of some kind, in order to make this not just be someone screaming in the dark whenever it has to be. If we have these kind of issues that are very pressing, but receive really lip service.
Can I just add to that, Councilor Burdick? I understand the point, and with the email, and again, to me, it was a different plug-in. It's more of like an operator, where it's like,
Right.
it could go to communities. So some of these things obviously would go to youth commission. Some of these things would obviously go to the school department. Some of these things might go to the health department. Some of these things, it's just where do you have that home base to then help? And I don't think any entity or any current department is structured to take on.
Well, right now, for instance, if you all come up with a strategy recommendation, whatever it is, you can call Jean Challies and you can say, we would like to work on the following thing. And if she stonewalls you can always make a resolution that will appear before the town council, and then we can have a discussion about it, and then we can make a decision one way or the other about a given topic. Do you know what I mean? Because it was non-functional for a period of time, and maybe even before that it wasn't. But going forward, that may be a better way to handle it. That if you have these blocks of time that you spend on these given issues, and you determine that we've got our resolution and it's going to go to the town council. And I'm saying this more through the lens of why, because obviously I picked the list of committees to talk about, not because I agree with the concept that we should be striking committees, but it just, I lost my train of thought because I was in the middle of it. But you see what I'm trying to say.
You're doing so well.
Which, no, what I'm trying to say is that may be the more appropriate role for the committee. And so that can work. It doesn't mean that because we haven't gotten anywhere with it up to this point that we should then be thinking of striking it.
I have met with some of the other towns, people who have human services, and some of those who, like Plymouth and that, and some of the things that, how they're operating on various things. Also, was it, the Mashpees, one of those. They, I should say, I think it was you, Chris, or that maybe it was Betty, that we don't have a human services department. We don't have a human services individual. So what we were looking is someplace to plug into the kind of, and I think Betty's right, the community services would be a natural place to do that. But it wouldn't, our next step is to meet with these other entities all at once, and probably take several meetings.
Well, I think if you're gonna have, I mean, if you're gonna have somebody to, and, we say that, well, we should have or at least it's the opinion of some, that we should have a human services department, or we should have at least one individual that is the human services coordinator, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you say that happened in the past, that was a recommendation that was made by this committee, but what then
It was a
happened?
recommendation, yeah.
It just went nowhere? Did it ever make it to a debate at the council, or did it just go up in smoke?
Well, the first time it was proposed, I got a phone call, basically telling me they're not human
Yeah,
services.
don't bother. Said don't bother.
And and that was actually proposed by somebody else. And then we have actually suggested that there be some person in human services. One of the things we've also been working on is a database, and that would be very helpful. And when I'd spoken to Cynthia, I know you had communicated with Lynn Poyant, and that can somehow be put onto the town information thing, which would also be very helpful. So that's one of the aspects. But I think it's something that needs to be further explored. But, we kind of got, as I said, we're on hold now because we wanted to make sure that it's something we can continue, which we would like to do. But I agree with Betty, it would make more sense. The obvious one would be a human services committee and have a human services department or a human services designated individual. But equally doable is to go in and plug in with community services.
But I think we're picking up momentum to figure out how do we best serve the town council. So, recently I went to a visit to Falmouth Human Services. Falmouth Human Services has 5 full-time clinicians, and they've been doing it for 50 years, and they're our neighbors. I'm not saying that we follow that model, but what an incredible resource right there to help us have a bigger picture. The needs of our community, Barnstable has grown tremendously, and I think as a social worker, sometimes we call it a social worker, where your role is to kind of be the liaison that coordinates all those different pieces. So the database is essential because there is a lot of overlap, but also kind of looking at someone or, structuring it in a way that we can connect our residents to the care. I mean, I think there's a lot of resources, but it's very disjointed right now.
Yeah.
Wendy is one of our newer members.
Yeah, I remember
Very
Brian, you were at the appointments committee a year ago, probably more, right?
About a year ago.
But so Chris, in your department, what would, and I know that you want the town manager and all that jazz, but in your department, what is the closest thing that comes to somebody who would even get close to this line of thinking? I mean, it seems to me like the Council on Aging might have people like that.
Outreach coordinators through Council on Aging would be the closest thing that we currently have.
Right.
Even remotely covers one corner of this large umbrella that you're discussing.
Yeah.
That is it. I think if you looked outside of the community services department, you look into the school department, they're probably more set up with the guidance counselors and
Right, for
those.
kids.
For kids, correct.
But we're not,
I
just
understand,
because that's our profession, that's not what the committee's about.
I understand.
Yeah.
So that's the only
Yeah,
real,
I
there's
mean,
no real plug-in.
like in the police department, and you don't obviously work for the police department, but you work for
I
the
get it.
town, and you may be able to guess. But, you know, they have community services, obviously. This was the point I was trying to make in our discussion that we had last time. So if, you know, an individual facilitator who, like, say, for instance, in the Council on Aging, the outreach coordinator is a full-time position?
Yes.
And what is the nature of that position? Just broadly.
So basically, they would, any need that is required or any services that are required, it could be a respite program, it could be that you need help paying utilities, it could be tax services, it could be a tax work program, it could be a whole multitude.
So their job is really truly being interactive with the people who are at the Council on Aging, at the community center there,
That's not a
and
bad
what they
idea.
need. But so like, for instance, you know, budgetarily, what does that cost us roughly, you know, to employ an individual in that capacity?
In that capacity with
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah, rough, you know,
85,000.
right. So for instance, you know, in our operating budget of over $200 million, you know, if for 80, and granted, this may be out, because I guess ultimately what this discussion is about, and then the purview of this committee, I guess you could look at it different ways, but basically, that may not be a discussion for here, but I guess it is as an assessment of the functionality of a committee. You could say that, you know, because we have, I always believe that all the boards, committees, and commissions have lots of people who are talented and intelligent and want to be involved, or else they wouldn't be involved at all. You know what I mean? And so we're trying to foster that sense of community involvement. So we don't want to necessarily be thinking about how we can eliminate these committees, but how we can plug them in, as Betty says. So for an investment of $85,000, we could see if that is if that's the direction we want to go in. If there's a facilitator who's specifically the Health and Human Services facilitator who falls under the umbrella of community services or whatever, that, you know, that'd be a place to start.
Or maybe we
Might-
even plug in and look for grants to help supplement
Yeah, no,
that, or to
I
see if
think
it's
that's
sustainable.
A great idea. I think that would be a recommendation of this committee as a very reasonable and rational place to start, you know, and, you know, certainly we work with Mr. Ells on that.
Yeah.
But if that could be in concert with your folks, you know, a full-time, that would give them what they need. They don't have the staff support. It's incredibly difficult for this committee to get any momentum where they don't have the basics. So I think that's a great idea, Seth.
I think it's a great idea.
want to jump on that.
Would you mind if I invite, Missy, did you want to comment? Missy has an enormous amount of experience.
Well, let me put on my cape and I will join you at the table.
Can you tell them what your experience is?
Oh, I'm retired from a huge city in LA County. I worked as an administrator in public works, but prior to that, I worked in redevelopment, so I have like 25 years of public sector experience. I worked for the City of Riverside Fire Department, primarily having oversight of their grants. So with reference to a number of I call it the political side, I'm pretty savvy as to where all you are sitting, how you think and what your role is, though I was always on the staff side. So with reference to writing grants or doing the research to come up with how to fund a position, in Public Works, I was responsible for the capital improvement project budget, as well as 11 different department budgets, so I'm pretty knowledgeable as to how, you know, how you fund positions and, you know, the loaded rates and all that kind of stuff. So I guess what Cheryl's saying from that side of the page, that's probably where my expertise lies, because when you talk about determining the cost of a position, how do you fund it, you know, you've already, let's see, it's May, so I'm not sure if you do a 2-year budget or
Just one,
annual budget.
one at a
So
time.
you're,
Right now.
you're probably already through your budget cycle for,
More or less.
it should be, you should probably, you're headed for approval for
We
your
have,
budget?
we're gonna have we just had the first reads on our operating budget, our capital budget is 100% done. But we have to have our operating budget done by June 1st, right?
July 1.
July.
It has to be approved by,
Because
By the
that's
end
by
of
state,
June.
okay.
Yeah, by
But
the
I-
end of June.
Where I'm going with that
This
is,
would be a next year thing.
well, unless you're really energized and then you go back and, you know, make an adjustment to your operating budget or whatever. So I mean, that's kind of like where I am as
Right.
far as like expertise lies.
No, of course. So, I mean, it would be a reasonable, I guess by next year. I just think that would be a reasonable direction to head in. If you can put together a really clear case and have it be all spelled out so that we don't have to go around the bush, you know,
Exactly.
be around the bush a million times with everybody and, you know, how that goes.
I think it would be important, is you were talking about, you have an outreach person specifically for your Office of the Aging. I think for what we're tasked with, it's be very important to identify the correct title for the position based on the tasks that are associated with that, so you just don't, you know, pull a title out of the air. In my prior life, what I would do is I would research probably 10 different cities and determine based on the cities, whether it's Falmouth or towns, you guys call them towns around here, but what titles they have, because they could have 5 different titles. Well, of the 5, what tasks are associated with each one, and how does that relate to what would best help us out? Because I really do feel, and Cheryl, our committee is, I've voiced it before, this is a phased-in thing. You know, it's not snap your fingers and make it happen. We have a lot of moving parts that we're very energetically wrapping up, but I think along with that, it's very important that part of the recommendation is we've done our homework, and based on our needs and the needs of the town, this is the position, and here's, you know, who else has it, and
Right.
here are all the different things, and so
Yeah.
it's probably something to consider within the next budget cycle. And if it's, you know, if it's really well received, then, you know, we could always lobby the council to consider doing, you know.
I think it would be well worth it, and I think it's high time, because, you know, we have 50,000 people now, and there's almost, 1,500 units of market rate housing that are gonna be built. I doubt the population is going to go down. And, you know, we have real world problems regarding addiction and homelessness. We have 500 homeless people, right?
I think it's more than that.
Must be. 2023, was it 60 of them froze to death, died in the wintertime? I mean, we have all these problems that we do that are legitimate concerns that are being more or less ignored, at least from, not necessarily by this committee, but by the functional apparatus of the town. So, you know, if it were to be in the future that, you know, if future councils determine that we should have a more, you know, a more aggressive stance towards human health and human services, we could at least start with one facilitator who can at least be, you know, can attend the meetings and communicate and bring the needs of the Health and Human Services Committee to the police chief, to the director of planning and development, to whomever. And then we could go from there. This is obviously a much longer term strategy thing, but I mean, I think, and to go around in a big giant circle and say that's what I think of the Health and Human Services Committee, is that they're just getting started now, and we'll just let them go, and hopefully in 6 months you'd have something to bring back, or, you know, whatever time frame, not to us, but to call Craig Tamish or whomever and say, we've got this, tell Betty, we have this beautiful package of, you know, this information that we want to bring before the council to fund this position, however that is.
Can I ask at this moment, Missy, just state your last name for the audience from the tape?
It's Kay.
Okay, easy enough.
Now you know why I went people shopping.
Any other committee members like to make a comment here?
If I may, how do you see, how do you envision this Human Services Committee that you have dovetailing with the work that is done at the county level? We have a human
I
service
have
department.
spoken with county, and I should have brought the guys and show something. Coordinating more with county. They have, in fact, I plan also to meet with them again. I wanted to wait till after this meeting. They have an extensive plan there that is working. So this would probably, and actually that's another thought, that we could possibly plug in somehow with county. That is one possibility.
May I
Because
ask
they
something?
have-
Do you
sure.
do cooperative agreements, like the town with the county? We did them in my former life, we had cooperative agreements.
Intergovernmental agreements.
Yeah.
We have a wacky relationship with the county at times. Because in Massachusetts, the counties are set up in such a way as they don't have much authority, except for in Barnstable. Most counties in Massachusetts don't have anything other than, like courts and sheriffs. But Barnstable County is one of the strong counties, and I don't, there may be others,
It
but,
is strong.
but it's one of the few. So we're bound by the Cape Cod Commission and their determinations as the county government, but that's not a thing that you find.
Well, with what you were talking about, I think a key thing would be to have, even if it's like new, some type of cooperative agreement so that it's clear, this is where
Right.
you are, and this is where we are, and this is how we can work with each other. But if you don't have that paperwork in place, which I'm assuming that you don't, it makes it
Well, if
a
our
little
lawyer
more
was here, she'd
difficult.
be able to tell us.
Allison's wonderful.
Chris, doesn't the county execute their SHINE program through you?
Yes, SHINE program, there's a couple other ones that we work with. I
That's a
think, Jen, you
county
do as well, a
program
couple other
that
programs
comes out
through
of
the
Human
county.
Services that
Yeah.
is
I mean,
executed.
that's a great point, Council Clerk. I think the
Yeah.
plug-in also could be through the county, and that way
Yeah.
there's more, I just see this very diverse. There's a
They
very
do have-
diverse need.
They do have a human services. They have a number of things, but that was, I said I wanted to get through this first, because I don't want to go to them and not know that we're still on.
Well, you don't want to tread on turf that you don't belong on.
That's
But it'd
true.
be good to know exactly what programs they, that are available through the county, because then that ultimately could help the facilitator
Yeah.
for this committee know, well, okay, this is your need, and this is where you need to go to get those resources, it'd be good, just a good working relationship, and ultimately benefit whoever is in need.
I brought the list of grants, but I forgot to bring the list of all the services. They have a lot of them. I actually, at one of our last meetings, I passed out some of the human services documents on some of the services that they offer through the county to our members. But there is an extensive amount that they do. So,
Any other comments,
or questions for us?
questions for it?
No.
Things you have to have a little direction to go forward with and then come back to us. Or
That'd
come
be
back
fun.
to the town, and so I appreciate your time.
Do you need a timeline? Are you just gonna, a timeline for when you would like, I'm just asking.
I think folding into the budget cycle,
When is the budget, when do you start working? I mean, obviously probably
Chris already started his next budget.
Actually, I was at the leadership meeting this morning, and the town manager said it started.
It's done. So
You've
you
always
start
done-
working on
You
the next
started,
one.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, they're about
We already
to-
started for next year, we're already starting for FY '27.
get in for next year,
What's-
start
what-
now.
But what's the
Now.
deadline?
the deadline is you start with decision packages, so when you talk about it, whether it's a capital improvement project or it's an operation gas, but I would start working on this now. As far as a deadline, I would look at trying to get something by September, mid-September. That way we have enough time to submit decision packages, and we have enough time to
Is
vet
that,
it.
your decision packages are like your initial?
That's how we get
from
funding,
like-
that's how we
like
receive funding for
December?
operations budgets. Position analysis is beginning in September, again, these things can be
Yeah,
put in, but I would shoot.
you do your wish.
Summer's
you do your
coming,
wish
so it's
list?
like September.
And then Mark L says,
Yeah.
no.
Then it gets
no.
submitted to the town manager and.
But this is one that I think could make it through, because I for one would be for it. I would advise Mark, I would say, for me, this is something I would like to do. And, yeah, I'm sure that, I feel, well, there'll maybe new people by then, who knows? But anyway, I think it would be worthwhile. And I think it'd have a likelihood of success, and it's not a huge amount of money. We spend all kinds of money on all kinds of stuff, so,
Yeah, I'd support you, Seth, 100%.
yeah, we'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens.
Counselor Clark,
Yeah.
would you like to say
No,
something?
I was just scanning the code, and I don't see it here, but I think, unless I'm skimming over it, but I don't think, if you're looking for staff support, that it would be reasonable to meet more often than once a month until you have staff support, if that's what you're looking for.
We've requested that.
But if you don't have, what I'm saying is it makes financial consequences for the town, like people taking
Recording.
minutes
Minutes.
and posting agenda and stuff like that. So you're looking for someone to do twice that function.
We do, Ms.
And
Hess,
we're a committee, so we are responsible for drafting our own agendas as well as doing the minutes. All we, as far as the.
Yeah, the only thing they do is they send it to me and I make sure it
Yeah.
reaches the clerk.
I'm trying to think who it was I spoke with about when we made the request of 2 meetings. Actually, it was at the meeting with Mark Ells and Andy Clyburn, I believe. We requested 2, put forth the request that we had made for 2 meetings a month, and there was a reason given for that, was something with regard, it might have been, was it the ordinance? Betty, you were at that meeting, do you remember what the reason was?
Bylaws.
Bylaws?
I think it has to be recorded,
Or once a month.
that they must meet once a month, but
But does that mean at least
Only?
once a month?
that seems like an odd thing.
Thank you, that's what we think. We think, let it, I mean, if we're willing to do the work and we're not
Well,
getting
Sharon, you
paid.
could always have a subcommittee meet offline to do the work.
Yeah,
You don't need the
We
full
have done
committee
that,
to
yeah.
do
Or
this.
maybe we meet longer and more efficiently.
Yes,
There
You
you
know,
go.
I think
Subcommittees
get
still
2
have
weeks
to
into
submit
one.
minutes.
they can submit minutes.
For the
Yeah.
purposes of the open meeting law, you just have to be posted and have minutes,
yeah.
right?
But if it says, you're right, we've done the subcommittee, we've done it that way for some of the things that we've done. But
I think she's suggesting that that might just be the best way to go moving forward to keep
For
the
this,
ball in
at this
motion.
time.
to keep what, I didn't get that, what'd you say? To keep the,
The ball in motion, to continue this subcommittee concept.
The structure of
To keep the
that,
ball
yeah.
in motion without infringing on anything else.
Because we
Well,
can keep moving
It's
forward.
troubling
Yes.
that you had booked a room and that it was double booked somehow. I know that's could be a mistake, a one-off thing,
Yeah.
but if you need a staff person to ensure that, actually post it on the town calendar
Yep.
and all that, that's something that a volunteer can't do.
Yeah, it wasn't the committee's fault, it was IT's
I see,
problem.
thank you.
But I think Cindy, you are doing that role.
Yes, I'm doing their meetings now.
That was per direction of Andy Clyburn.
Well, no, it was me volunteer, I never heard from Andy.
Oh, okay.
It was me just calling Cheryl and saying,
All right, so you're okay with that?
Yep.
thank you, Cynthia. I've known Cynthia for, what, 10 years now? maybe?
Long time.
10, yeah, she's outstanding. Okay, so I take it I can post the meeting agenda for July?
Thank you for your
Is that right?
dedication.
So,
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think
I'm
you
appreciative.
guys are doing.
Thank you.
Next meeting.
You can make your point.
Actually,
thank you
thank you
for
to
coming.
everyone for the input. Betty, thank you
Nice
for
to see
being our
you.
liaison, you're outstanding, and I think it's been very helpful, and your suggestions, I like.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, moving on, we have discussion with our planning and development director, Jim Cutler, about the housing committee.
I
Jim?
don't wanna talk to Jim, I'm leaving.
I'll be right back.
Wow.
I know, that's tough crowd.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to sit on the end seat so you could just slip off the door.
Right, excellent. There you go.
Can we, yeah, we have a quorum. I mean,
Yes, go
Seth
right
should come back at some point.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for having me, here today to talk, Housing Committee. So just wanted to just quickly go over just general responsibilities of the Housing Committee, per the charter.
What do you need?
And then happy to answer any real questions or and have a discussion. So under 24117, the Housing Committee is established. That was established in 1997. In the charter, it states there shall be a housing committee comprised of 5 members with 2 alternates. Right now, it's not fully staffed with members, and it's frequently understaffed with members. It's a challenge to get volunteers for various boards, committees, commissions. See, the regular, and one of the things I think Councilor Clark had mentioned before, being very specific about types of requirements, is one of the actions here in the Housing Committee. It states, though there's a number of categories: banking, industry, real estate, housing authority, minority groups, single head of households, private developers, nonprofit civic groups, and tenant associations are the requested requirements to be members. The authority and responsibilities, so this is an advisory committee. The Housing Committee facilitates the coordination factors that affect equal access to housing and issues relating to the development of affordable housing, and the functions as the town's local housing partnership for the Commonwealth Local Initiative Program. So that's the application one applies for at the state level if they're going to request an affordable unit be included or eligible for the subsidized housing inventory at the state level.
Say that again, Jim, what role do they have in that application
So they are the
process?
signator, the town's local housing partnership, so they're the signator for all affordable housing applications that go to the state.
Why is that?
That is codified under Mass General Law 40B, that the
Oh,
local
so
housing.
you have to
partner-
have this entity.
No. Because they are established, they are our local housing partnership. So you'll see on the specific application says town manager's signature, local housing partnership, if applicable. So
If
if the
applicable.
town has a local housing partnership, which our charter has codified, that local housing partnership is the housing committee, then they are the signatory. And so each and every affordable housing application, not the affordable housing application when we start, meaning a development's looking to be developed and they get to weigh in whether or not they are gonna sign off. At the very end, if it has been approved and someone comes in and says, okay, my requirement was 10 affordable units. I have 10 separate applications, these are the units. I need the signature of the manager and the local housing
So it's
partnership.
purely an administrative step.
Exactly right, and at the agenda, on the agenda, you'll see, in past, and current, I believe at the next housing, meeting, they will be reviewing those applications and, the chair, Ms. Hayes, signs off on it.
What value does that add to the process? It sounds like it's a purely administrative action.
Well, so it's dependent on the local housing partnership, in this case, the housing committee. They could certainly have more discussion on it, but you're right. I mean, it's the application and the standards are set by our
But we
codified
have
law.
Yep. We have the inclusionary zoning, so they can't say,
Tweak that, tweak this. I would say
what can they do other than sign it?
Thank you. So in the past, I've seen local housing partnerships step up and say if there is concern over size, materials of the units, let's say, as an example. I've seen the entity states, it's not in kind and character with the market rate units and raise concern over that.
Did you see that here?
No, in my previous community.
town.
So that is a role they could play. Right now, we provide updates on the applications, and the chair reviews it and determines whether to sign or not. But it acts as an administrative
But if-
function right now.
If they weren't there, you said it's, if they exist.
Yep.
What if they didn't exist? Would planning and development question the materials and
Yep.
things like that?
So we already review earlier on in the process, and when we say, when we're
Site
looking at
plan
site plan review, and if it's, when it's beyond site plan review, or if there's any relief necessary, so if it goes to zoning board of appeals, or planning board, or if there's a regulatory agreement, we'll weigh in on those aspects of it. At times, you've seen as counselors, whenever someone's applying for a comprehensive permit, we'll state that early on, because that's a condition that the state holds as the finance arm many times. And so we'll make sure that we notify someone such as Mass Housing that this is an important aspect to us. So we'll note that in the letters many times.
Okay.
So that's just one aspect of.
Wait, Seth, did you have something to say?
Oh, it was, you may cover it as we go through this, but I was just gonna say, you just made me think of, because I missed the very beginning, because I didn't wanna talk to you, but then I came back.
That's fair. They always come back.
Yeah, always come back. But so as far as the housing committee interacts with the affordability aspect of things as it pertains to development.
Yep.
What, if any, role, it may be codified in there, I don't know, do they have in monitoring adherence to agreements made about affordability? Say the 10% that has to be maintained as affordable in a given development. So, I know that we've talked about regulatory agreements, not necessarily who's watching the regulatory agreements that we have, however many we have to maintain whatever. And I know that there was some talk of, again, the county establishing this housing core, this position to count and maintain the count and to maintain the adherence to the affordability requirements. Currently not really being done by anybody, right? So what interaction could the housing committee have with that line of thinking? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
could it be a thing that if tasked with it, they conduct a review of whatever buildings A, B, C, and D, or a whole list of them, or if there's a complaint, or if there's some belief that they're not, because we've been talking about enforcement, people are hammering that lately, and who's abiding by what, and so on, but could this committee have a more active role in that? Would that be reasonable? Is that in the code? Is it statutorily appropriate? It's not a regulatory body, but do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
So, because as we've thought about this process of reviewing the committees and when we just immediately got rid of the ones that were functionally defunct, totally defunct and had no purpose, that it occurred to me that maybe it's more about what is assigned to these committees. Since we have the people and they have the expertise, just like with the housing committee, that maybe it's more about our approach, meaning the town council's approach, to the work that we're delegating to these committees that are delegations of our responsibility. Do you see what I mean? So maybe it's on us to make these committees more effective by giving them a direction. So maybe that's one thing that they could work on, but they aren't. You know what I mean?
Yep. Jump in on that one. So those are spot on points. I would say specifically in terms of monitoring that, my belief would be that that would be a specialty, that would be more of a staff-oriented assignment than a 5-member volunteer that meets every so often. But in terms of direction and leadership as to what actions the housing committee could achieve, yes, it's codified in our ordinance that it truly is the town council providing that direction. And it specifically talks about and I'll just read it verbatim so I'm not summarizing, to provide advice to council regarding policies and programs aimed at increasing the town's supply of diverse housing stock to meet the documented housing needs of its residents and meeting its requirement under Master General Law 40B. So that's that needs assessment, essentially the needs assessment that's required in the housing production plan. The committee is meant to meet annually with the council to apprise the council of issues pertaining to affordable housing and to discuss policies to effectuate fair and affordable housing in the town. What I could foresee is two things in the coming future that potentially could help stimulate that conversation. One is the local comprehensive plan and the general discussion of housing and how housing relates to the future of our community, and the housing production plan. If so chose to adopt, there's a number of actions that are suggested that the council could prioritize, and state housing committee look at these and advise us on how best to implement these, and those could be reported back to the council. So that's just one as an interrelationship to the council. Also, similarly to the manager from an administrative standpoint, not so much policy, but how they could provide advice to the manager. And actually, it states in here other applicable boards and committees and commissions, which I haven't really given too much thought to, but certainly could be.
Because you could use an interaction of licensing, Board of Health, and housing to effectuate a policy, or enact or to enforce a policy, regarding a number of different things that, say, for instance, John has been interested in for years, which is short-term rentals and affordability, people maintain it, like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If rethink how they're all working together and what levers we have that we can actually be pulling that our people are just totally disregarding. And this committee, I think, could be doing a lot more than, because I wouldn't have picked it and we wouldn't have put it on this list if we didn't think, well, what the heck are they doing? But they could be doing something that would be immensely valuable to us. Like, is your housing position still open in your department?
No, we don't have an open position at this time.
Wasn't there one?
There was one. We sought out a housing planner for over a year, I believe. We had to increase the salary and
still nothing? More money and nobody wanted it?
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's that.
But yeah, so but we fill the gap with all the housing assignments. We have quite a bit that come our way. So.
And then in terms of, I know that I think it was when I talked to Elizabeth before about this, that in terms of that compliance person from the county who may be coming around or may not be, I mean, what's the status of that?
Yep. So I recently received a note from our county administrator saying that they've just put out or are to be putting out the request for proposals to have basically formally establishing that regional housing services office, and so it would be a consultant that would be that arm, that regional housing service office, and the primary task at hand in the scope that we have stressed in Barnstable is monitoring. All the other core services are nice to have. Right. Monitoring is an essential.
To what capacity? To what extent would we be able to utilize that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what would be? Because they're going to be among 15 different towns, obviously. And I know that I've actually ran into and had an interaction with the county has a new pilot program with the Board of Public Health on the Cape in liaison with the state. And they were really pleasant, let me tell you, when they came to me. But when, is that gonna, do you think that, and this is outside of this necessarily, but it does make sense relative to it. Is that going to be enough to satisfy our requirement, do you think? What service we will be able to get from the county on a contractual basis?
Yeah, so in terms of monitoring, so understanding our affordable inventory, 100%, that if done correctly, that will achieve that task 100%. I've come from multiple regional housing services offices. This isn't a novel concept. It's actually done quite a bit throughout the Commonwealth. And it just makes a world of sense because this is something that has been cast upon us by the state back in 1969, and every municipality is required to monitor their affordable units. So it's just an administrative action that every town has to do. The efficiency is a no-brainer to regionalize. That's one of the few actions that I can definitively say makes a world of sense to be a regional action. So that, and I would say predominantly that is the function that I could foresee Barnstable taking out of their regional housing service office. All the other stuff we can do internally, we have the expertise to do internally. And we have the expertise to do internally monitoring if we really needed to, but it would be such a time,
It would be a full-time affair for somebody.
Exactly.
But it'd be front-loaded, right? I mean, once you get, because we don't even know where we're at, really. I mean, we do.
We do. I mean, that gets thrown around a bunch, but we absolutely do. We have a spreadsheet of every single deed restricted unit in the town of Barnstable, over 1,000 units. We have, and most of those are large developments. So the Everlys of the world, I actually just got Everly's updated database 2 days ago.
Really?
Yep, and it says every single unit, who lives in there, what their income range is, and are they compliant?
They use third parties to maintain.
Exactly right. So almost every sizable development uses a third party. They come in, they submit it to us annually. We provide that to the state. Now it's the smaller ones that and especially the ones that have been around since the 70s that, we're not knocking on their door saying, hey, is this still in compliance? So those are the small ones, but we know that, where they are, and it's on our list of actions, so that when we have a monitoring agent, that's the first action created is issue out the post. It's literally a postcard is the first step that goes to every single one of them.
Jim, does the housing authority have to go through you, or do they report to the state independently?
The housing authority also will confirm with us because it's on our subsidized housing
But
inventory.
is that all put up into one, do they count for us? Do they count towards our SHI?
Yeah, so not all their units, but many of their units. They have to meet the Mass General Law's standards. So if they're under 80% area median income and they have a unit
Those do
that
count.
deed restricted year round, do count. Yeah, but there are other units that
You don't have to, they provide you, just like everyone, they provide you.
they are a monitoring agent as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Most regional housing services person will monitor, we've got all the big ones, but how are they gonna monitor? Or are they told to monitor them?
Yep.
To find out where those are and see if they're still under the agreement.
That's correct. Yep. And so, again, they're not gonna have to reinvent the wheel. Other regions have done this, so there's very strict actions that can be taken. Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities has signed off on this is the proper step to do so. And so yes, they would be tasked. That would be, from my standpoint, that would be the absolute number one. If we got nothing else from Regional Housing Service Office, it would be.
So here's the question, and Seth brought it up earlier. We know with 100% certainty, we have regulatory agreements in this town that people are not abiding by for affordable units. We know that.
We know of 2 units.
Okay.
Okay.
So we know that. Now this regional guy comes in and says, hey, what's the difference? I mean, what are they gonna have more power to?
They'll have no enforcement power. It'll be up to the town to enforce. So if we identify.
So they're just identifying. They're just the
absolutely.
data collection.
Yes, data collection, monitoring, and assigning to us that they are in compliance. I'm willing to bet that 95% of our units are in compliance. I'm betting that.
Have you ever enforced anything?
No,
I'm serious. No.
In terms of
Have you ever taken enforcement action on any of these that we know, these 5%?
No, I'm spitballing that there may be 5%. I only know of 2 units, and I've talked to that property owner, and he's seeking a development agreement to no longer have to do that.
Right, so we haven't taken any
Because
action.
we haven't had to.
We haven't had to.
Can you name me one that we do?
No, I'm saying we haven't taken any action when we know that they're empty.
No, we have. We reached out to him. We said, this needs to be complied with. He said, I would like to seek a development agreement instead.
Oh, that's the answer.
That's the answer, yes. Yes, you can certainly speak to the manager if you would like us to do something different, but that's the answer.
No, I'm just curious, so that wouldn't be, that's still our role as a town?
Oh, well,
We
absolutely,
have to do
yes.
that?
Yep.
Okay.
It's just interesting to think about the ways that, you know, that we can use this committee more efficiently, more effectively, with something real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, how would you do it, Jim?
Yeah.
How would you, I mean, I haven't seen them recently. I remember when Ryan was still here watching a few, I found the committee to be very passive and very poorly informed. Maybe not,
Yeah.
it's just not their own fault, but just the way that they were operating.
Yeah.
I remember at the time it was the discussion of the housing that was gonna go going on at the landing. And it had already been determined that there was gonna be no housing yet. They were having a lengthy discussion about housing at the landing. I was not a town councilor, I was just watching as a citizen. And it struck me as strange, having watched a town council meeting and known that, and then see this going on. What was that amazing disconnect that created, you know, like a complete lack of knowledge? So I don't know, I can't speak to it because I haven't seen it recently, but I haven't seen as a town councilor anything come out of there. I don't know.
Yeah, no, people have certainly changed seats on that committee, so that would have probably been 2020 or something to that effect. So I don't think there's anybody still on the committee from that time. I think there's a number of energized folks that want to do a number of items. I think you probably will see across the board when talking to all these committees that those that aren't regularly scheduled committees tend to have a lot of, you know, I wouldn't say side conversations, amped up excitement to meet.
That's kind of was the impression, it
you
just
know?
seems like, just.
Yeah, and so we as staff could do a better job of trying to keep them on target, and you know, it needs to be a strong chair too. I always say, you know, it's always helpful to have a really strong chair that helps, you know, direct the conversation. But yeah, I would say in order to get a better product out of this committee, I would say it would be if we have soon to be adopted plans with actions that are suggested, identifying priorities that the council wishes for the committee to take on the challenges on, or at least giving some direction to. And then we as staff could help those committees, you know, try and move the needle on some of those actions. I think now is actually a ripe time for that, or soon to be a ripe time for that, hopefully. So that's one. I would just want to, real quick, the other action that's codified is under Chapter 9 of our general ordinance, so development agreements. So under affordable housing, the housing committee plays the lead role as the negotiator for development agreements for affordable housing, so inclusionary housing. So that rarely takes effect. This is the one that's currently being discussed, is the only one that I've been a party to. And so that is codified as well. Yep.
Now, do they have any role in any stage in the tie and TIF negotiations?
Not at this time, but again, that's a subcommittee of the council. The council could certainly look for advice from the committee.
Because, you know, there's a thing, I mean, you have the people on the housing committee, but they don't have any input on whether we do a tie or a TIF, and it just comes down to Paul Neary and Paul Schnepp, you know, or whomever is on the committee at a given time. Like, it just, but you know what?
I raised my hand.
Or yes, you were there, John, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about the last meeting I watched, I think you might have been there, anyway. But, again, just an example of, it's disjointed in terms of, we have a committee, but then they're only doing like one little thing, and then it's more like they get together to chat. Not that you know what I mean, I'm saying that this stuff needs to we need to corral the ideas that are associated with a given committee. We need to make sure that they're aware of that, and they need to have a charge. You know what I mean? Rather than just being left out in the woods. And you say meets is not regularly scheduled. What do they meet now? When they feel like it? When they can? Or
Yeah. So they try to meet monthly. It honestly ends up being more quarterly, based on the schedules of the committee members.
And there's 12 people on it now?
No. There's 5, about 4, I believe, right now. There's requirement to be 7 total, 5 regular members.
So
2
it can't
alternates.
meet
Pardon?
It can't meet now?
It can, and they're meeting on the 22nd, yeah, tomorrow.
Did we appoint anybody lately?
Do you know who's not on the committee, Jim?
I don't have the roster in front of me, but I did meet.
I
you did
feel like we
appoint
just
Joe
appointed
recently.
a couple of
You
people.
did appoint Joe very recently,
Uh-huh.
and he's already come in, he's excited.
So I have a full complement of members, but if you know of somebody that's not,
Let's see. I don't see anybody appointed, yeah, no, Joe. Okay, if we are, maybe I was missing one.
yeah, these three are new.
Okay.
So how many are there total?
7 total,
Yeah.
right? Or actually, do you have hold on, let's see. Okay, yeah, it says 7 here. Yeah, so we have 3 new members, right? Yeah, and one just recently appointed who.
Joe,
Yeah, we just met with, he was very excited to.
Because he's a motivated guy.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the expectation should be that they meet monthly, and I think that they need to be given a charge.
They have to be monthly, right? They have to.
And because, I think that's a more logical step than eliminating these committees. If we establish a charge for them if necessary, and, introduce what amounts to a requirement for meeting, and then they continue to not do anything, then that would be one reason to say, well, do we require this? Other than I know that there's statutory or obligations, whatever. But I can think of 5 things that they could be working on right now that, just a few of which I have mentioned. But moreover, we had our housing sub ad hoc committee, which was fine, but, we need a very, very concise strategic objective that a committee can work on, getting to the end of that. Do you know what I mean? It goes back to the fact that we don't have a strategic plan as a council, that we're just kind of spinning our wheels and going in 10 different directions. But that's something we hear about every day, or I hear about, not every day, frequently. And then we hear about it every council meeting and from every public commenter, that we have enough market rate housing, we need affordable housing. That the town is gonna create some form or fashion with Jim's very able help. You know what I mean? That should be their charge.
Maybe
Why are they not working on
perhaps,
those
Seth,
things?
they could take the recommendations of the ad hoc
Right, and
committee and
pick
be the
one.
first people to start working them.
And go right at it.
So that you know, I'm looking at the agenda for tomorrow's
Is it on
meeting.
there?
Yes, it is.
There you go. See, look.
Update on the town council subcommittee.
But so, to be clear though, so we as staff provide those updates to them, but that's the advisement of the subcommittee of the town council. We're waiting for council's guidance, just like with zoning, the housing is much the same. We need your guidance and direction.
Right, so if we were to say for instance, the Marston's Mills project, which, you have done a lot of diligent work on it to get to the beginning stages of, whatever. And we say that we may have a resolution or whatever at one of our meetings, that we are directing the housing committee of the town of Barnstable to tackle this thing with Jim's help and his staff, to find a way to, to incentivize the creation in whatever form or function that takes to accomplish this goal, so that A, you have somewhere to be and talk about it. B, we don't have to do it in public in front of but at a town council meeting for 6 weeks straight, arguing about it. We'll have a direction to go in. That would be that'd be great. Why not? Have them do that.
Well, the ad hoc committee already delivered us their priorities.
Right.
No,
But
he's
I'm
saying
saying
give
to
them a specific project.
specific project to work on,
Yes.
and say, we want in 6 months, something. They do it. And it might also empower them to do something. And then think about the public input that you get too. If people knew about that, they say, they're talking about the Marston's Mill School at that housing committee. But you'd get it back and forth, you'd have people going to that housing committee meeting, and then it would feel more like a thing, rather than, meeting in the dark and people are just like, oh, the housing committee, maybe we'll meet this
I
month.
don't know if
maybe
you've
we
ever
won't."
been to one of their meetings. Again, they're extremely passive. Jim gives or whoever, Ryan, they give updates. And then that's kind of it.
And I-
Give the update.
Right, and that's that, I
Well, it
guess.
looks like they're getting re-energized with being repopulated
Right, I'd love to let them have a shot at it, but I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we should tell them what they need to do. You know
Well,
what I
yeah, they
mean?
need something to do, other than to
Yeah.
be the recipient of
Right,
of
they can-
updates.
You get an update, you get the recommendations, and they say, well, what, my goodness, what could we do with that? No, instead, we say, we're directing you as a committee with a delegation of our authority and responsibility to pursue this particular thing and come up with 5 scenarios. Jim will be able to help them to direct them. I don't know, does that sound onerous or ridiculous
No,
to you?
no, that's, more direction the better, because, you know, without direction from leadership, yes, we're providing updates, and I think without direction from leadership, if I brought the Marston's Mills School, for instance,
Yeah.
to them, you know, they could provide their insight, but without a goal being established by the council, you know, I would say, one of the options, it was, let's just say 20 units of housing, they would say, great, 20 units of housing, that's excellent, maybe we could increase it a little bit, to add a little bit of more affordability. Without any direction from council, I'm just redoing the design, coming back and presenting it back to you.
And then you get kicked out and come back, kicked
Yeah.
out, come back. And then also, you know, looking at different ways that you could structure an agreement or an arrangement to incentivize us to end up with the thing that we want and not something that we kind of want, and then we get a little bit of what we want. You know, examining the options in terms of ground leases and what we can do that would be, or tax, you know, other than tie and TIF, but something a little bit more aggressive. I don't know what we're legally obliged or allowed to do, or, you know, that kind of thing. Just giving them something concrete that we can then provide a little bit of, maybe a little clarity. Maybe they come with an update after 4 months, then we can pare it back, send it back. Because it reminds me of like our ADU thing that we did, which obviously, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I was kind of frustrated with toward the end. Because like, we could have had a committee or something that could have worked on that.
Yes.
And it would have come in a much more, and I would have felt that it was pretty good, but I know, John, people wanted to change and do, and that's fine. But if that had been done in a committee, we would have saved ourselves 2 hours and been getting confused and having to go back and forth, and you know what I mean?
I certainly do. It was,
Right.
the thing that was frustrating, there were some latent changes and it was very confusing to everybody.
Right.
And we're not experts on it, but the amendments were confusing and it could have been ironed out to a more concise
Right.
way for us to look at it before it comes to us and we had to go through each particular.
Right, in public at 11 o'clock at night in front of everybody, wasting the staff's time, the public's time, and our time. And so again, you know, in a broad way of thinking about it, these committees can function in that capacity for us. But they don't, not all, I mean, these strictly advisory committees. So, anyway.
Jim, do you feel the members, you know them, I don't know them, do they have the expertise?
I haven't met 2 of the new
Or are they
members just yet.
energized? I mean, it's
There's a-
different to be energized versus having the expertise to,
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I would look to the appointments committee. I mean, they're the ones that have reviewed their resumes and discussed them. I'll staff whoever you give me, I'll work with them.
I know.
because I will say, they approved the housing production plan and the
Yeah.
town council disapproved it.
Yeah.
So, there's
Well,
that.
I try to put good people on the committees for my.
Oh, as opposed to everybody else.
Housing is
For my
incredibly
part.
complicated.
It is.
Incredibly complicated.
Well, I think that we should give this reconstituted committee a shot with the new members on it. It looks like they have a reasonable agenda. I would suggest that they meet monthly, that quarterly is probably
Is
not
unacceptable.
making any traction.
Yeah.
But I can understand if their last minutes that were posted were back in January, or the agenda was in January, now they're meeting in May. So, but that might be because they weren't populated. So I think they need to be given a shot. That sounds like a reasonable agenda. And if as liaison, you could communicate that we value their work and we think that they could or should be a little more robust. Now that, no fault of theirs that they weren't populated, but now that they are, they've got the report from the ad hoc committee. Let's see where they go with this. Does that make sense?
well, sorry, you weren't asking me, you were asking Jim. But I agree with that, but I think that we need to go a step further. I think that one of the, and not just as it pertains to the housing committee, but I think that as a result of our charge to review the purpose, composition, functionality, and effectiveness of the standing committees of the town, I think that we should recommend, if you feel so inclined, that we take a new approach to these committees insofar as charging them with things, rather than just letting them kind of go off on their own.
Then we'd have to rewrite the charge.
Yep.
Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, I mean, but it's not necessarily, we could rewrite the charge for the committee if that's the
I mean,
requirement.
that's where they get their direction from.
But we also could direct them at a given thing. Not saying change, like I don't have the charges here, you could read it, but I'm not sure it's not,
Betty,
I don't think it's exclusive. So the charge, where is the charge of that one? Authorities and responsibilities? Yeah, the housing committee facilitates the coordination of the factors that affect equal access housing related to development of affordable housing and functions of the town's local housing partnership, Commonwealth's local initiatives. The committee
That's
also
what he just
provides
read.
advice to the council, as he just read. There's nothing exclusive in there about the town council directing them to do a certain thing within that charge.
But so it would be the committee, housing committee would provide an advisory opinion
Right.
on
And then,
whatever charges.
yeah, exactly, and so their opinion, their advisory opinion, we asked them for it, and they gave it to us, as opposed to them coming up with something that they want to advise us on. Do you see what I'm saying? So the charge remains the same, it's our approach
Yeah.
to the interaction with the committee.
I hear you, but we can't,
We certainly can, because all of these committees are appointed by the town council
Yeah.
as
and
delegation.
this is how they get their directive.
They're
outside of any of
their
these
broad
individuals.
directive, meaning the boundaries of their authority.
So give me an example.
So I just gave one.
Yeah.
So we say to them that we say to the housing committee that we would like for them to review in this time frame the Marston's Mills School program, or program, the property, whatever. And provide us with their advice on that topic.
Another one potentially could be that I think is rather unanimous and or in agreement is the inclusionary housing ordinance and looking to adjust the percentages.
Right.
That's a grant we're seeking, from a staff level, it's a grant we're seeking to hire an economist to help us with that. That economists and staff could bring those findings to the committee for discussion, and they could ultimately provide guidance to the council.
Or they could review and recommend possible policy regarding ties and tips, because I know people are frustrated with those. And so we don't have a framework in place other than the boilerplate framework that is the requirements of the, but we don't have a philosophical or a strategic approach to tie and TIF other than the tie and TIF committee. So, do you see what I'm saying? So there's a million different ways.
Yeah, but I think we already had some deliverables from the ad hoc committee that the housing committee now.
I don't think so. I mean, yes and no. I mean,
But it's on their agenda for tomorrow.
but so will they,
can't
so,
move any
but
faster.
then you could pick something from that very, not voluminous, but a long enough report, pick one particular thing and ask them to look at that or one section of things and say, we want a recommendation on this particular part of the plan in this timeline.
So perhaps John as liaison, because it's on their agenda to, for the update on the committee to assess and recommend strategies for housing creation within the town. That report had been delivered to us as liaison, so I could say, let's tick off.
Yeah, but as liaison, but he doesn't speak to the whole council. I mean, do you see what I don't see why you don't agree with that, or don't think
No,
that that's reasonable.
I'm just saying that how,
We get together at a meeting, a town council meeting, and decide to charge them with a given thing.
You can do an admin code change anytime. That's just changing the code.
Or, as it stands now, the de facto head of the council is Craig, and he could charge them with something. I mean, but we could get together and I could just we could make a resolution saying that we wanted them to do the following thing. I don't think it has to be that complicated, but that they could, you see what I'm trying to say?
You can make a recommendation to change the admin code for a certain committee, and then it has to go before the council.
But it doesn't even have to be that broad. I mean, if we're just telling them to do one thing within the purview of their mandate.
Yeah, as long as it's in the charge already, you don't
Yeah.
have to add
And it's a
anything to it.
specific thing relative to that. Because the problem is, we're here asking why these committees do nothing. And so, if we want them to do something, then we're gonna have to either disband them or direct them to do something.
I hear you say, I think that probably they were disabled by not being fully appointed.
I disagree. I mean, maybe, that's possible. I mean, we could wait another 6 months and find out, or we could just ask them to do something.
Okay,
Anyway, sorry, I'm going on.
that's okay. We were just talking about tasks. I'll be there tomorrow.
Yep.
Personally, I think this should come from the council, just not
Right.
what we decide their tasks should be. So,
And we should do it we could do it as a strategic policy of the council to then have that will then be in place, and then it won't be something that you have to guess about, because the
that could be
council,
for any committee.
yeah, and at any
If
time.
there's some thing we wanna go forward and have them do it first, and we bring it together, have a workshop or whatever. But at
Yes,
least
we could
have
do all kinds of stuff.
their work on things. So tomorrow, what do you suggest
Well, I think, I hear what you're saying, but I think we can work with the framework we have and accelerate it instead of
We
having
wouldn't be changing the framework. What I'm saying is it's a strategic objective of the town
I
council.
understand that.
As it pertains to our charge, which is to review the purpose, composition, functionality, effectiveness of the standing committees of the town council, the standing committees of the town. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that we can work through our liaisons to deliver that this was the sense or the consensus of this.
But I don't think that's, because that isn't a strategic, then that's not an enshrined strategic objective of the town council. That's relying on, you just say, then how do you direct that? How does the council direct the liaison to do that given thing?
Because we already have a report from the ad hoc committee with, it's all.
But you're looking at just this. I'm saying across the board with these particular these committees, the ones that we have deemed as being less than effective.
Yeah, so I think it's on the path for being better. You don't think so?
I don't, what would guarantee that though? I'm not talking just about the housing committee. I mean, we're talking about the human services committee. I gave them a charge in a way today, now, we did. But so if you want, I'm sorry, you can cut me off, John, if you want, when you want. I don't mean to hijack this meeting.
No.
But we as a council do not have a cohesive strategic plan. We do not have any strategy whatsoever that I can tell. And so it's difficult when you're in command. Betty was a colonel in the Air Force and can understand this, I'm sure, that you have to be able to have a demonstrable strategy that you're using. It comes from the top and it goes down. And everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing as a function of that strategy. So absent any strategy that's demonstrable or is concrete and can be written or read, everybody's going all over the place. So, this I think is a larger issue, but I'm in this committee right now talking about it in this setting, and we have an opportunity to create a strategic objective that then will filter down through the organization so that people know what is expected of them, rather than, oh, well, the liaison came and said this, the liaison came and said that, oh, the liaison changed, he's got a whole different idea. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
That's what I'm going for. So it's
So-
more of a broad thing than just this particular committee and this particular issue.
So there is a strategic plan. It's just one that you hadn't
No,
participated in.
I watched that strategic planning
No, it's-
meeting, and I mean,
It-
it's not, I mean,
It's not like we don't have one, we don't have a
but are we
code.
executing it? No. I mean, you can say that. I watched the meetings. It was an hour and a half long with a consultant. It was 2 years ago. I remember, Betty, you were there, because I remember
I was
Paul
there.
Cusack was there. And it didn't really say anything.
I understand.
It didn't.
It was a lightweight
But
process, I
But
understand.
I mean, and again, John, I'll stop when you tell me. But the thing is, it's clear, to me anyway, as a member of this council, and maybe to some of the staff who won't say it because they obviously wouldn't, that there is no discernible strategy for the last 2 years. Maybe there was a little bit, started out pretty good, but we've been kind of all over the place. And that's this is one place that we can begin.
And I think your exact point was echoed last night. That lack of a strategic plan was mentioned how many times at the LPC's
Right.
meeting?
Because it
You're right.
it starts at the top and it comes down.
It's the elephant in the room, yeah. And they had suggested, and I thought it was a great idea, that their plan can help inform the strategy.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of going backwards, but backwards is where we are.
Right.
So,
No,
I think Seth is, and you say they're getting reconstituted just like Human Services, but I saw them when they were constituted, and they were wholly ineffective when they were constituted.
Okay, now I'm gonna cut this off.
All right.
But I
No
think,
more.
as we've had this discussion, we should have some action on what we just say, and I think that has to go to the town council.
Yeah.
This is not for me to go tomorrow night and tell them what to do,
You should
because,
just be watching.
I'm just gonna watch. So I suggest that we put something together along the vein that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And say the town council, should and has the right to direct some of these committees with certain tasks to complete by date certain. Because they're already existing, it's not another subcommittee, and then let's move from there. So we go to the council first, we say, can we work on this and put it out there and then work on it?
Maybe I'll call Allison.
Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Bereket Nelson. It's
Yeah.
Bereketi. I'm a
Okay.
resident of sorry. I'm a resident of Marcy's Mills.
Yeah.
And my question to that was just if you have to task the committees to see if they are effective or functioning, and then you end up with a list of committees that are effective and can function, but only when they're tasked to do something, are you not still at the same problem this committee's here to discuss?
That's a good point, but at least you'd be getting something out of them.
Do you, I mean, if it's like a one-time,
Well, it would be as a function of the strategy, you'd have to constantly be updating your asks for these committees. I just don't, it's hard when you go into an advisory committee, whether they're gonna spin their wheels or they can do the charge or they can execute the charge this is my opinion, of course, wholly my opinion, that they can do the charge if we give them a specific task. That's not going to it's not gonna totally subjugate their ability to make their own decisions and to do something otherwise at the same time. Not in, you know what I'm saying? They can have more than one thing on the agenda at a time. Mm-hmm. So I think that I think it will help them in the long run to have something to work towards. They can always be doing their other stuff alongside it. Is that what you're asking?
I mean, but the
Or you
question
think
is
that
the
they'll
question
be-
that they're not getting anything done in general.
Right, I mean, I guess so. I guess that is the question. But so my thing is, would you advocate then eliminating these committees right off the bat and just being done with it?
No, I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked and still need to be answered, but I mean, at that point, I feel like you're just gonna end up with a committee to review committees that are getting tasked if they're effective. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? 'Cause
Well, I see what you're saying. This is a one-time and ad hoc committee that's gonna go away soon, meaning the one we're sitting on here
Yeah.
right now. So I don't know if it could be years from now that it would be revisited. I personally think that they do need to be charged, especially if they're the committees that are not, that lack direction.
that just doesn't seem to me like a way to consistently have them be effective.
What
and
would you
functioning if
suggest?
they're- I don't know. I guess that's what this committee's here to sit
That's
for.
good. Well, it's good to ask questions.
Well, I think your point is well taken. If you always have to hold somebody's hand,
Right, then what's the
then
point?
it gets to be tiresome.
I can agree with that. I mean, it makes sense. I think that I'm always of the opinion that it's better to try something and have it not work than not try anything. So in light of that, because I think that it's so important for people to be able to continue to participate in these committees, because I think the civic aspect of this is very important. You know what I mean? I think that people's ability to feel like they're involved with their local government and to feel useful and valuable and to get into a situation where, because you never know where this will lead for them or for the town or for whomever, that I don't think that the right approach is to begin by eliminating people's opportunities to participate in the civic process at the most basic level. So that being said, I would rather make an attempt to preserve these and have them be effective in whatever fashion. That was my idea. If you come up with a better one, you can email me, because be willing to give it a shot. But you know what I mean? As an attempt to keep them viable. And then maybe 6 months from now or a year from now, after they have that, maybe it isn't necessary anymore. Maybe our strategic objective no longer is viable, but we still, or no, the strategic objective not, but the mechanism for executing our strategic objective as it pertains to these committees. The lever will still be there, but we may not have to pull it all the time because they'll be doing their own thing.
Okay.
So there you go.
Good, Kristen.
A quick FYI, the day after I was elected, and as was President Tamish, we spoke of the strategic plan. And we aligned someone up, we had a face-to-face meeting with someone who then reneged on this being the facilitator. After that, Greg pursued another avenue, which was supported by the town manager. And apparently the guy was on vacation, they were doing this phone tag thing, and the last that was left was President Tamish was waiting for a return message that was 3 weeks ago. So this morning, Mark Ellis said, I will follow up on that. So it's been pushing a rock uphill for just trying to schedule this. Then we're cognizant of probably finding out that having a strategic planning session in the summer is probably not very welcome by the counselors.
We all signed up to do this. I mean,
Well, I'm just saying,
I don't think we need to hire consultants and facilitators. I mean, we can, but we know each other fairly well. We've been serving together now for almost 2 years, or nearly 2 years. I understand, and I can appreciate that. But at the same time, time marches on.
It does, yeah.
And we've got stuff to do, and we've got things, pressing topics that need to be legislated now.
I hear you.
Ish. And
I just wanted to
and
make
I'll
it
stop,
clear.
John, because we already closed this topic.
I just wanted to be clear that an effort has been made that was sincere.
But Seth, maybe you can bring that to
Yes.
town manager and talk about that as a possible discussion item for the council coming up.
Yeah, meaning our resolve to direct the
Yeah.
the committees. All right, I'll talk to Allison first,
Okay.
and then we'll all come up with something, and I'll bring it back to us, and I'll talk to Mark and that.
Chris has been very patient, so Chris Canella.
Town council, I'm last.
Good luck.
Be across the hall.
Thanks, Jim. Just for the audience, Chris Canella is the Town of Barnstable Director of the Community Service Department, and he's going to talk about the Golf Committee, the Recreation Commission, and the Council on Aging. So go ahead, Chris. It's your-
Yes, well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be a part of this, and anything I can do to help, I'm always willing to do so. I'm actually kind of glad that I got to go last to kind of to see some of this conversation, and I would echo the comments, because my directive comes from the town manager, and we're looking for more leadership from town council, and I'm listening to this, and I'm listening to your comment and saying, why can't the town council informally request to let those committees, why don't you give me your top things for a year, give me your 1 month, your 6 month, your 5 month, your 10 year, whatever it may be, and ask them to do that. So I'm not going back down to the housing committee rabbit hole, but I think there is some similarities between the golf committee. I think it's 7 committee members. It's a full committee. We meet every second Tuesday of every month. We usually cancel one meeting in the middle of winter, February, when there's nothing growing and nothing planning. And I've gone to numerous golf committee meetings, and it's basically, to me, it's a reporting session that's been charged here, and it's another. It's a check valve potentially for the golf division, but I've seen it as another exercise to tell a committee of what we're doing, and trying to articulate. We all know that we have the pipe burst issue at Hyannis Golf Course. Right. We all know that we have an environmentally sustainable land care management plan. Hey, why did you plant the tree in the middle of 18? I mean, these conversations are what is happening at these golf committee meetings. there's a report that's done by Director of Golf, Jesse Scheckman, who handles the operation. So he's telling where we are financially, where we are revenue-wise, what are we doing? And then there's James Bentley, who's the Director of Maintenance, who supplies, hey, this is what we're doing, we're fertilizing, we're airifying, whatever cultural practices are that is happening. The role that I always understand is that the number one is anytime we make any recommendation from community services to the town manager for a fee increase, Manager L's first thing is, have you asked the committee, whether it be the golf committee, whether it be the rec committee? And to me, that always seems a little bit counterproductive because I'm asking most people, the 7 members, I think all of them are members, not only of the committee, but members of the golf course. So do you want to pay more money for your membership? And I'm going, it doesn't really work. You know, a lot of the issues that we have with golf is access. And you look around at other towns and you look at the town of Yarmouth. I believe their membership's $385. What does it get you? Nothing. You have to pay for a tee time. There is no tee time slots. We use the Chelsea tee system in Barnstable, and it's okay. So you're going to cordon off specific time blocks for memberships, which we have to do, and it's more money. But then, at what rate? At what are we losing? If we could have Old Barnstable Fairgrounds is a solely tee time, I'm going to pump out 266 to 300 rounds at $100 a piece from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, or am I having someone who's paying $13.75 for a membership play at 30 times? Where is the cut? Where's the give and where is the take? And I think that sometimes is challenging. I think it helps us in some regards, but again, it's an exercise of education. You know, oh, well, why are we not having a concession at Hyannis Golf Course? Well, it takes like 4 months to get a liquor license and going through the ABC. And, well, there's only 16 people that have a mobile food operation that are permanent in the town of Barnstable. It's like you're regurgitating the same things over and over again. And you're trying to explain the same things over and over again. It's an exercise of reporting. If you watch the golf committee meeting from this week, you know, they're talking about divot days, you know, small tasks or something like that. Oh, why don't you coordinate that? And to Jesse. And I called Jesse the next day and it's like, why aren't they coordinating it? They could be more helpful with doing things on that front and coordinating it, not just identifying weaknesses or identifying things that we already know that we have to improve on. They have been helpful. We had the chair actually sat on for the request for a proposal for the concession there at Hyannis and at Old Barnstable Fairgrounds. So in that respect, but that could be anybody. It doesn't have to be someone on that committee. They are informative projects. I think it's a mechanism for communication back and forth where someone might feel more comfortable talking to you as a counselor in their precinct. Is same thing with the golf committee member. Like, I'm going to go to the golf committee person. They're going to bring my problems or my concerns then to the golf professionals.
Do you get much public comment?
Not a lot of public comment. I say the majority of it has been, they are looking at right now, I don't know how in tune you are with other communities right on the Cape Cod, but there's a disconnect sometimes, I believe, with an enterprise account in general. I mean, the town of Yarmouth spent $7 million, don't quote me on this, but spent a lot of money on the irrigation system on their golf course. It's a general fund account. Like, oh, we generate $1 million a year. Okay, but you just spent $7 million doing an irrigation system. Now they're going back right now and they have a town council vote. They're looking for another $7 million to redo the bunkers. And it's probably gonna get approved. And our committee's looking at it saying, well, how come we can't get new bunkers? And how come we can't get new golf course irrigation systems? Because we don't have the money. We have to. So we're looking long-term at a long-term business plan with Director Milne to try to forecast this. But it's like, if you look at our mission statement of golf, it's like affordable, top quality playing conditions or something along those lines. It's like,
No.
that doesn't work. Like,
Yeah.
when was the last time you had something that was top quality and that cost you was cheap? It doesn't work. I think they help again with the some of the things that we're trying to do, and I think the piece that's missing not only in golf and in recreation is that liaison to CPC. I think that's the piece that's been missing in rec. Jim Tagley, when he left, because we could, Jim Tagley, when he left the rec, we lost a voice where you could at least get into CPC and say, listen, you guys, Chris, you remember this, when I was working with the DPW, we spent $1.7 million at Lombard Field redoing the field and the playground, and I was ambitious and I said, I'm gonna go to town council, I'm gonna go to CPC and say, hey, I want you to give me $170,000 for the same 1 acre over in Barnstable, and we redid the field back there. And those things where CPC was already kind of vetted, they knew, and they were like, yeah, we can do this is gonna work, and we can do those things. So I think that's where the golf committee is at. Before I go to rec, I wanted to see if there's any questions with the golf committee.
What about that tree on 18?
Right in the middle, it's designed, we'll have to talk to
It's
the
like the
corner.
Eisenhower tree, I think, what, Michigan come back and cut it down or something?
I don't know, same thing as that we've got, we covered so much ground with my ranting and raving about the other ones probably the same thing could be said to the golf committee, right? As you say yourself.
But how do
It's a reporting mechanism,
but how do they and how should they get their, and I'm not saying directive like you need to tell them what to do, but how do you then provide them? Because it's not from us, it's not us telling them what to do, meaning town employees. It's not, hey, you're a voluntary committee, I want you to do this, this, and this, but it's like, hey, how can you guys help us? And where does that come from, so they are actually working with us, not necessarily for us, but
Sounds like it's more administrative again for you guys. Sounds like you could fully function without that committee.
it's a task of an hour and a half a month
That's what
that
I'm
someone
saying,
has
it's
to go to and
tasking you
channel
to go report.
Would you
communication.
prefer to be rid of it then? Any task in such a
I'm
point?
not seeing where it's adding much to your operation. I think it's,
I think there is value to having a sounding board. To hear that the town manager asks, did you vet this through the golf committee? I see the same kind of pattern with the Shellfish Committee, that these are volunteers who know this industry and are worth polishing up the, how do I wanna say, the town staff's actions. Because I imagine if I was a town manager, you wouldn't want the staff to assume that there's a priority and then find out afterwards there's a clamoring of complaints afterwards. So I think this kind of gets in front of any issues to focus.
I think again, to beat a dead horse, I think come back to the strategic plan, and then where are they getting their purpose and their function
Right.
from, and is it
right.
loosely enough defined or clearly enough defined where they have the parameters to do what they need as the resident experts, whether you live in Marston's Mills or you're a golfer or on housing, and you have enough freedom to say, well, I don't want to work on that, I also want to work in.
So these members, are they all golfers of both courses? I mean, they're highly familiar with the courses, they
Yes.
golf.
Yeah.
Two of them are professional, right? Two of them are golf pros?
I believe one was.
One, oh, okay.
Seth?
But years ago, there used to be a DPW committee, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm, yes.
So, as the DPW, and this is again, another way of thinking about it, looking at it, the DPW committee became redundant because they had professional engineers, and everybody that, all the professionals that make up DPW. Because I don't know what that would have looked like in the old days when it was like, we're gonna bring before the DPW committee repaving Route 130, you know what I mean, like.
Yeah, it was a Public Works Commission.
Commission, right, so they would be like the
They
equivalent
vetted,
of
they
the golf
vetted
committee.
everything, RFPs, they were a vital part of the DPW back then, but when the DPW started hiring more staff, there was no need for the
Right.
commission to exist anymore because the bulk of the work that the commission did was now done internally.
So is that true of the golf committee? That's my point, I guess. That is it one of those, because like with the housing committee and the human services committee, you could say, well, we don't have a human services department, we talked about that.
We don't have a housing either.
And we don't have a housing department either, so there's still a need for that. And then if we have if the DPW was small, we needed a committee because we didn't have a million engineers and whatever over there. And then same thing, so then golf, now do we have enough professional golf and recreation staff that can maintain that without the necessity to have a golf committee? And is it a hindrance because you know, as you say, could you take a more business-minded approach to it because it is an enterprise account? That would we be best served by that?
Do they
It's
still
just
look at contracts, Chris? Do they still look at contracts? I know years ago they used to have input on the golf cart contracts and on the.
They are reported to, they have input on, but again, it's an
I didn't
advisory
know,
group.
yeah, I didn't know what
It's-
their role was this time around, but I know years ago they were heavy into that, because Mark Millen used to talk about the fact that they passed the contracts through the golf committee and they approved and liked it.
We asked for approval.
Yeah.
As an advisory group, but again, not necessitating approval. It's a process.
Yeah, that was just food for thought.
I mean, I think there's merit to that they are a check and a balance. I think it could be somehow more strategically developed to have a goal and let them develop their goals. I mean, part of this ad hoc committee group, you know, what specifically can each committee work on, whether it should be eliminated or not, but if it's not, how can we as the town council then provide a directive for them to do something
Do
that's
you,
worthwhile?
through the golf, I'm not a golfer, so I don't know, but do you have any kind of like membership events where
Oh, yes.
during the year where people can give you feedback, the members can and interact? I mean, do you have events?
There's a
like
lot of events that happen that are members only and member events and feedback and
So you're really getting that piece of it. I mean, I think that's the greatest value is, you know, hearing from your membership.
Greg, do you have something to say?
Yeah, are the meeting times for the committee posted in the pro shops? Because I don't think I've seen them before there.
I believe they are posted a week prior when they are due out, but I will check with Director Sheckman.
I mean, I think that'd be a good.
But they're at the same time every month. That's, you're talking golf? 5.
Is that on the events in the town?
Yes.
They have to be
Yep.
posted on the
Have to be
town
posted. It's
council.
5:30 at
I
Old
mean,
Brunswick
on the-
Fairgrounds.
They have to
Every
be posted on the
second
town
Tuesday of
clerk's
every month.
webpage,
Okay.
48 hours in advance, so
Except
all.
February or March when it's snowing and it's not growing.
Good.
Yeah, any meetings that you're looking for, they have to be posted on the town clerk's webpage. Don't look at the individual committee pages. Look at the town clerk's page, and under official agenda notices.
Yeah, he was asking specifically at the pro shops, if it was posted at the location for members and visitors to see.
Well, yeah, because you said you never get public comment, which begs the question, does the public even know this exists? You
Yes.
know?
Yeah, that's the only way you find it.
Personally, I don't think I've seen one there before. And then, one more thing, is the committee the only thing standing between the public and the town manager regarding rate rises and?
No, the way that the process goes for rate increases is we make it, we, meaning the community services director, go to the golf committee, rec committee, ask them for their approval. We submit why we think we should do it, and then that is read, and that is an open meeting. And there's usually a 30-day period that the town manager waits for any feedback. So then he has the authority to reduce, eliminate, or proceed with rate increases. So there's a lot of time for feedback on that. Since becoming the director 2.5 years ago too, we're looking at fee increases on other things in other departments that I'm in charge of, and I like to get out in front of it to let them know. Say, hey, you know, you can anticipate a fee increase for this service, and this is why I'm doing it, and it helps them forecast regardless of what they're doing. Like, hey, I'm gonna have 300 participants, and it's going up $25 per hour, or whatever it is that I'm talking about, that they know. And that's what manager always wants to make sure that the big users or the big people that would be affected are aware, and that we can justify it.
Okay, any other questions of the golf committee before we move on to the recreation commission?
Recreation Commission, so they have their charter in there. Basically, the Recreation Commission advises and otherwise assists the town manager in the establishment of rules and regulations concerning the use of all playground and athletic fields and municipal ice rinks, including those under the jurisdiction of the school committee, except during the regular school year or at other times when such facilities are reserved for the town of Barnstable school activities. So basically, anything that is recreational outside of school operation hours. So just for clarity on that. Recreation meets every month on the first Monday of the month at 5:30 PM via Zoom. And I know that, and again, I don't know how the law works or how it was designed, but I know currently they're meeting every other month via Zoom most times. That again is, I would say it's a reporting structure. If you watched any of them, that's what it is. We've missed the piece since Jim Taggart left of the CPC. That diode to get into there. I mean, it was huge with the comprehensive field study that was performed. I know that they were a big catalyst behind that. They were very, very involved with CPC to get those funds because they're the ones going out looking at the facilities saying, how can we have these type of facilities and how can we do this? And they got in the CPC's ear and said, hey, we need to do a study. We need to.
And that study was impressive, but it hasn't gone anywhere that I can see. I mean, I think very few people have even seen it, but it's a fantastic study.
I was very involved in that process with the Department of Public Works. And it's a very challenging undertaking to try to do, and we were trying to do a lot of it, or the town council approved a lot of it to be done with an in-house process. And I think given the environment that's changed with labor and talent leaving or moving on, it's hard to grasp your hands around it. I mean, we've talked about different facilities and playgrounds for years.
Oh, yeah.
For years.
Well, and you did it, that field study had a comprehensive plan for the Marston's Mill School.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that's the piece that I think is missing now is that tie into CPC that can help us advocate for it.
Right.
At this point in time, it's another reporting body, or it's another check and a balance for us. Again, when we want to raise fees, hey, we're gonna, if we're gonna raise fees for parking permits for the beaches, if we're gonna raise fees for any of our general funded recreational programs, HYCC programs, those get vetted through them. I think that they also probably understand better than most about what the Hyannis Youth and Community Center is. I know there was a great conversation at the budget hearing last year, and I think it was Councilor Turkelson who had asked me about, income and revenue, and it's like, I'm so glad someone finally asked me about this because of all the things he does for the schools out after school resource program. So I think there is a benefit there. Again, I think you guys have probably heard the same thing, that there needs to be a defined area within an undefined area to really task these committees and commissions with something that's tangible.
And I do like your mention of the CPC, Chris. I think that's important. That came up at our Housing Ad Hoc Committee. I don't know if you remember, John, the discussion where they say housing needs to suck all the CPC. And I say, oh, no. I mean, historical recreation housing doesn't, there's recreational needs too. And I think it's important to kind of hold the line on that even though housing is terribly important, these CPC have other purposes, and I equally support the recreation and historical piece of that.
Well, I also think too, I mean, if we're talking about CPC, I mean, one of the capital improvement projects that I brought forth was specifically at Hyannis Golf Course with the intention of reducing water potential. My first objective is to go over and get a plan done of the site. And I'm talking about a 1% grade plan, shows me irrigation, irrigated turf, number of square footage of lake sand bunkers, and say, hey, can we do a 30% reduction of irrigation and maintenance? Can we do because we need an irrigation system. I'm gonna be 50 in May, that golf course is the same age as me, and that irrigation system is the same. So if I go to the town council and say, hey, can you give me $7.5 million to do an irrigation system, you're gonna go say, what? If I went to CPC and said, listen, you guys have supported us purchasing this property for water protection, I'm not only gonna cut down water used by 30%, I'm gonna cut it probably down 60% because it can be more efficient. Those are things, if I had someone in CPC would go, hey, you have to talk to Director Ganella because he's got some great ideas about how we're gonna save some money. It's gonna cost us some money,
It's
but
all related.
It is. That's the piece that I think when I was excited about to bring to the table today was the CPC piece.
Yes, it's huge.
And that was Hyannis Golf Course you were talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
But fast forward 20 years down the road, I mean, you could say the same thing at Old Barnstable Fairgrounds. I mean, we're looking at a business plan, but financially you're treading water. You can change the oil in the car, you can do everything you wanna do to maintain the car, but at 300,000 miles, at some point, that car is gonna fail and need to be replaced.
I'm at 200,000.
You got another 100,000 to go. That's it for recreation. I'd be happy to answer. I think we kinda,
Yeah. I've seen the Recreation Commission out and about visiting.
yes.
I was at Lombard Field, my daughter was playing softball, and they all came in a van and got out. And then I went with them into that old church building over there, what's that building in West Barnstable? Not the Selectmen's Building, the other one.
There's the community building and then there's
Yeah,
the
the
selectmen's
community
building. The
building.
little tiny one by Luke's Love is the selectmen's
Yeah.
building.
And I went in there with them and I chatted. Yeah, they were out doing their thing, so that's good.
Yeah, and they help provide us a report, when they do their field trip of the conditions and again, how come things haven't improved from when you guys did the comprehensive fields? But some things are. I mean, Austible's online for a playground, Centerville's online for a playground,
Barnstable.
Barnstable, yeah.
But I'm just saying that you have, the Recreation Committee has done some, move the needle on
Yes.
these
Yes.
projects.
Okay.
But it's all thanks to a revenue source, which is CPC. And that was set up, and that happened relatively recently, when it got, when the CPA was restructured to include passive recreation under the open space umbrella. So what you're saying, if I heard you correctly, is that no member of the Recreation Committee has volunteered to go on to CPC?
There's not a liaison anymore since Jim
Right.
left his position.
So that's why I'm saying that when we populate the
Exactly.
committees, that we expect of the 7 people, that one of them is going to agree to double dip and go to more meetings.
Or CPC has to have someone from theirs is delegated to be part of community services or attend a certain amount. I'm not sure which way you wanna do it, but some avenue to do that. Last but not least, the Council on Aging, Board. 9 board members meet monthly, actually just met, today, it's the 3rd Wednesday of every month. I know that there was something brought forward, Cindy, I believe to you, about, I have it with me.
The Council on Aging bylaws?
The new bylaws, which is kind of unique because I think they're going in a different direction because I looked at it and most of the changes had to do with, they were trying to eliminate the terminology committee and went to more of an advisory group, which tells me that they're trying to get away from open law and everything else, that that's my assumption, my personal opinion of it.
Yeah, I've given that bylaws to the town attorney
Yes.
to look at.
Yes.
And I explained that to Chairman Jope, that it's nothing that I can put an approval on.
Yes.
The town council has to, the town attorney has to look at it.
Yep, so we're in that process, and I know that they are trying to have an alternate member become a full voting.
She is on, Christine Beer
Yes.
is currently an alternate, and she was, the committee sent a letter, John Jope saying that the committee would like her moved up to a full member. That is on the June 10th Appointments Committee for their consideration, and then it'll go to a council meeting. So that's on the June 10th Appointments Committee.
I have a question, if I may. Is not the Council on Aging in state statute?
Yes.
And so that's, we're mandated to have one? To have it?
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go, they can do whatever they want then. So that's that.
Their purpose is outlined by the bylaws, identifying and responding to the needs of older adults, advocating for services to fill identified needs, partnering with the director and staff of the Barnstable Council on Aging, and also the Friends of Barnstable Council on Aging, which is no longer in existence. They have resolved to assure that dissolved, thank you, to assure services are implemented and coordinated. They also help educate citizens, and a lot of this board is made up of people that similar stature, similar age. I think that this is the one that actually has some positive energy and has some vibrancy and needs, I think Job came back and I think everything's kind of gotten a lot better. I think there's a lot of energy there. Again, I think this is an opportunity to have these connections, to have these conversations, because it was brought to my attention today that, you know, this group is ambitious and they're looking at the Dunn's Pond walking path and boardwalk again, and it's like, here we go again, we're recycling and regurgitating. We have school property, we have other property. The cost of maintaining this, maintaining trails, is how many miles of trails. You're on those committees of how many, you know, what are we actually doing? We already have a plan. Are you helping us? We're trying to do recreational spot. We're trying to get ADA access out of the rear of the building. We're trying to coordinate and get a grant for an outdoor pavilion so we can have an outdoor recreational space. And can we tie that in with then having ADA accessibility from the rear? Because that ramp is forever and a day, it's not compliant. So those are the things that we're trying to work with them and those organizations. But I would say that they are vibrant and we need them,
Great.
hands down.
That's correct.
With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think I've said enough.
You don't like me?
Okay, Chris, I appreciate that. Moving on, approval of the minutes from April 30th. We have a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes from April 30th, say aye.
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 I did make that correction.
Okay, so we're good on that. And then we'll talk next meeting. We need a date and we also need an agenda. So what do people have in mind for?
Ceiling. Oh, sorry. I'm available when you guys make the meeting and I'll do my best to make it.
Unfortunately, I didn't bring my calendar,
It's up
so
to you
what do you
guys.
have, Cindy?
Let's see, we're looking at Do you guys what day of the week is best for everybody? Is there a day, not a date, but just a
These are
day?
what is this, a Wednesday? It
It's a
seems.
Wednesday. Yeah.
My days all vary all the time, so.
Every Wednesday in June is open. Every day on a Monday is open. So on June 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, or 30th is good for,
June 2nd, that's coming.
which is a Monday.
June 2nd, 9th.
I think that's too quick. I think we should stay with this, do another 5 committees. I think June 2nd is too quick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So what are the dates again, Cindy? June 2nd, 9th?
June 9th, June 16th, June 23rd, and June 30th. Those are all Mondays. Wednesdays, June 11th, 18th, and 25th.
Like I said, I don't have my calendar. What's good for most people?
I think June 11th or June 18th.
June 11th, the only thing that I'm now thinking about is the Cavaliers schedule,
All right.
because I have to be there on those nights. And that's the only thing that keeps me at night.
You on the team?
No, only. I was never much of a baseball player. I do the concessions there. I have the concession contract for that
Do you
field.
want to do a tentative date of June 11th?
That's fine with me. I don't know, again, you
And,
guys schedule it around me.
Then coordinate back with Cindy about if that works.
And what committees would you like to have on there?
We'll do suggestions.
Were we gonna go, so that, I guess that's more, I'll try to keep this
I
brief.
think if we continue with the advisory ones.
Yeah, these were just the low hanging fruit, right? These were the ones that we wanted to look at immediately. And then we could pick, I don't have my list in front of me here. I got nothing. I have
you
the
got,
Council on
let's
Aging
see.
bylaws for some reason, you can't
Oh,
have that.
Chris has that.
And that's the email from Chris Canella, I think those are.
You know, you've got CPC, you've got CFAC, disability, well, they run on by the state.
I think it was helpful for us to evaluate the committees by department head.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good strategy.
Yeah.
What are we after with the CPC and what was the other committee you mentioned? CFAC. 'Cause
Yeah,
all
they're
of them seem to be-
advisory.
they seem to be run well to me from just the outside. And I think we'd be sort of like
Yeah.
wasting our time on those committees.
Okay.
We should concentrate on the ones that we think, for some reason or another, are having issues.
Yeah, and I think we should also think about, like we did today any kind of overarching philosophical or strategic objectives.
Well, I mean, there is an overarching strategic, and when Chris and I and a couple other folks went to that training up at Fort Devens, we don't have, except for maybe a couple of the TITIF, we don't have the normal standing committees. I mean, most, you talk about CFAC, it's functioning. Most city councils, which is what we are, even though we're called a town council, have a standing Ways and Means Committee that is staffed by councilors, to your point, that then are given this, they do the machinations, they have the hard discussions, and then they come forward, to the full council.
I think that sounds like a good idea.
The CFAC does that, but they don't, and I'm the liaison to the CFAC, and there isn't a lot of clarity. There's been some internal strife in the CFAC. Are we just reporting? I don't think there's much value in them reporting on this. I don't.
Right.
I don't need them to report on this. I've got this, I can read it. But I'd like them to evaluate it. I'd like them to come forward with some suggestions. That's what I would like.
Yeah.
But, so
So
I
would you
kind
like-
of think, so, but again, it goes back to this whole strategy thing. It really does hold us back in many respects. So you can say they're functioning well. I don't know, do you read the CFAC reports?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Sometimes I watch their meetings, but I get their pamphlet usually when they
Yeah.
come out with it and stuff, but it's just a condensation
It's an
essentially of that.
executive
I mean,
summary.
Yeah, and that's, to
But
me.
I would like them with again, these people are incredibly
Highly
intelligent. I would
qualified.
like them to come forward and say, hey, you could do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, why aren't you doing this? Why didn't they come forward when we were having the discussion on the residential exemption?
Right.
That would have been
Yeah.
something to have a great report on. Why aren't they helping Chris with some of his challenges? Why aren't they looking at the golf courses? Okay,
Right.
these are enterprise accounts. Does that make sense to have them as an enterprise account?
Right. How could they make
I'm the
more money
liaison
out
to
of
the
it?
airport. They're an enterprise account. You think they make money off of flying airplanes? Hell no.
Yeah.
They make their money from their solar, from a lot of money from renting to the steamship authority. I mean, that's where they're making their money. Okay, so, and nobody else has that. And then we say, oh, well, we're not funding you, although we always supplement the HYCC. Nobody else has. Why can't the golf rent to the steamship authority? Why don't we give them some? I'm just saying, you say pass over CFAC, but I personally would like to see CFAC given a lot more authority, and it might give them some direction because, again, these committees aren't going to decide on their own. They're just not, because they haven't been given that authority.
Okay, I see the reason behind that.
Yeah.
You want to ask CFAC, a representative?
And I'd like to have Mark Milne, or, if he's not here.
He
How-
comes
How many committees fall under finance?
probably just CFAC, I think.
And CPC, I'd love to hear from them. I
Yeah.
really would love to hear from them, again, for our strategic vision, because we had this tug of war. There's a lot of folks on the housing side. We should be getting all the CPC money,
Right.
And
now today we had Jim come, but nobody came from the housing committee. And so
No.
we're having a discussion absent anybody from that. Maybe, though it is nice to have the director, because if we call it CPC, that would be Jim again, right? I mean, we should ask for somebody to come. The Human Services Committee, just by virtue of the fact that 5 of them were here, that shows me that they
Well, they had to be, because they're,
they were gonna get the job, but
Yeah.
but they cared enough to come, you know what I mean? And that, I think, is
Yeah.
important, or at least it's reassuring.
I mean, I think we ought to hit, I think we ought to hit all the advisories, because some of them are kind of, ships out at sea.
Right, maybe Betty
The
picked 5.
regulatory is very clear.
Maybe Betty should pick 5 this time.
I don't know, just name 5. I don't care who they are, just name 5.
Do we want, now this meeting has gone on for 2.5
Yeah,
hours.
we gotta,
Do we
Do
need,
3.
do 3 or
three.
something?
Or
Yeah,
maybe I
maybe
won't
3.
have so much to say.
Well, CFAC and CPC are gonna be comprehensive,
So just leave it at those two then for
just do those two.
for June
Okay.
11th.
Can you invite somebody other than the people we've had
Sure.
to represent them?
Yep.
Do you need me to write Mark Ells or something?
No, I'll reach out, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Mark Milne would do CFAC, and he can attend via Zoom. I'll ask for a link so that he can attend and, not for the general public, but just for him to attend.
Yeah.
And the other one, yeah, I'll get the other department head, no
And
problem.
make sure, or I would say also ask that somebody from the committee come, at least
He
one.
usually has the chair come, Mark does, which would be Hector Gunther.
Yeah, I know that very well.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would want to ask is a little bit more about our visitor today.
Oh, yeah. You're asking me questions. I was thinking, who's this guy?
You look very young. Are you a student? Are you?
I'm a sophomore in college. I just finished my sophomore year at Suffolk University. I just have a strong passion for good governance and
That's cool.
efficiency, I
Use
guess.
that.
You gonna be a lawyer?
Yeah, I came from work. I work at Goldberg Law Group right now, so I just got hired there as a legal assistant. But
Oh, wow.
a long-
Beretka, is your
long-term-
name Beretka?
Bereket.
Say that, spell that for me.
Bereket.
And your last name?
Nelson.
Nelson, okay, great.
Are you gonna join us again?
Yeah, I'd love to.
I'm glad to have you.
CFAC.
Yeah, you're incredible.
More
I know,
Yeah.
that's neat. Well, thanks for, you live in Barnstable?
Did you
Or
go to
Marston's Mills?
Barnstable?
Marston's Mills.
Marston's Mills. I'm right by Old Barnstable.
But did you go to Barnstable High School?
I went to the Barnstable Public Schools up until 7th grade, and I transferred to Cape Cod Academy after that.
Okay.
But I've been local my entire life.
And your parents are still here?
Great.
Do you wanna get on a committee?
Exactly.
That's right.
He's a
You have to be
millbilly.
18, right? You're 20 then, right? How old would that make you? 19, you're old enough.
19. Wait a minute, you're 19 and you just finished your sophomore year?
I'm 20 in a couple weeks.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
wow,
well, glad to have you here. And if you can help us out, that's always great.
absolutely.
Maybe if you got other interests, maybe we can find another committee for you.
Yeah.
There's
Sounds great.
absentees on, some of our committees. Might wanna throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah, I can, whoever I need to give, or what would I have
This
to
lady.
go about that?
Go
But
on.
he's only here in the summer, you know?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I only got 3 months.
See, that's a problem.
I just think
sorry.
if you continue to
Because then you'll be
attend-
calling him in because he's missing fall meetings.
Yeah,
You're right, you're right.
No, it's a pleasure to have you here and I hope you attend our subsequent meetings.
Yeah, I'd like to keep attending these.
please do. You're always invited.
Well, thanks. There we go. Motion to adjourn.
Hey, Charlie,
I'll second.
Hey, Charlie.
second.
All those in favor?
All in favor of adjourning? Aye.
Aye.
Aye.